Just tell us what your plan is.
All right, we are unmuted.
Hello, I would like to welcome everybody to the work session of City of Idaho Springs for September 23rd, 2024. We're getting rolling here at 5:30. We've got 5 things on the work session. I'd like to start off with the Clerk Creek County Library ballot measure. And Libby's here, and you are welcome to come up if you would like to speak on this.
Oh,
please, yeah.
We're also.
That's right, we'll do one up.
Yeah, Gary, we're gonna have you in just a little bit here. But I thought it was really well explained in our packets. And I know we had been advised about it in the past. But looking forward to a few days of authors visiting and a fundraiser as well.
Yeah, just in case you guys didn't know, I'll just give you a little preview of what we do at the library. Here in Idaho Springs, we have the beautiful Carnegie, and that is 120 years old this year, if you did not know that. So it is an amazing building. The windows are
commemorative library cards.
There are commemorative library cards that have a photo of the Carnegie branch if you're interested. We have 7 countywide board members that are the governing body of the library district, and you have 2 board members from Idaho Springs. One is Candy Luco and one is Drew Van Doren, just in case you were curious about your representation. On our board, recently we've lost about a third of our funding in the last 6 years. That is mainly due to the mine production formula. So as you've heard of lots of that, we've gone from 26 employees to 16 employees. That equivalent for full-time is about 6 to 8 employees, depending on our time of year. We operate 3 branches. So we have the Carnegie here. We have a public branch, the John Tenney Memorial Library. And then we have a local history archives as an appointment branch. And we're doing a lot of history preservation through that branch. And we just really want to connect, discover, and empower our community members. We have fantastic resources, whether traditional story times, craft activities, family events. This includes some cool events. We had Craig Johnson come. We did a presentation to about 140 folks at the Elks here. We have Book Fest, where we give out free books at Halloween coming up. We've done Dia de los Libros. In partnership with friends, we did the writers workshop. That was last year. We started that. Chuck, you came and did an awesome presentation with that. And those kiddos learned about writing a book. And then they also learned about library services and cataloging books. And in partnerships, the friends also have a literary festival coming up with our downtown organization. So lots of fun services that we provide. We also provide services to the Senior Center and Mitchell White, where we go and meet those folks where they need it. We have a lifetime checkout for any seniors in the county. We do fun business services like notary, meeting room checkout, Wi-Fi hotspots, copies. And then we have some very cool stuff like the New York Times is free through your library card. We have the Libby app, which is online ebooks and e-services. And then one cool thing that we bring up is we have the Library of Things, which is weed whackers, we have Instapots, we have VR, virtual reality headsets, lots of cool stuff. The mill levy is minimal. I can let Chris talk about some things with that because I'm just here to give you information on the services that we do.
We also deliver books to those that can't get out of their homes.
Oh, yes.
And we also sponsor the little libraries. There are free little libraries around the county.
So I've done about 9 meetings in the past week, and I love that people are giving us their stories about how library services have affected them. So,
I thought it was really helpful to have the mill levy breakdown per $100,000 valuation, so folks can kind of weigh, you know, their own situation, and also the fact that you have absolutely endeavored to help yourselves. And I know it was painful, but for example, the employee numbers have dropped, you know, as a necessity. But I mean, it's quite clear to me anyways that you're certainly trying to operate, you know, within your means. And it does not seem to me that the mill levy is very high. I feel that the request was modest. That's my personal opinion on it. But you were going to elaborate a bit on the mill levy?
Yeah, so I'm Chris Gould, for those who don't know me. I was the principal of the middle school, high school for a few years, and I'm just part of the YES committee, which is an issues committee that is supporting the library working through this. And so, bringing it, from the 70s, where the library district, when it was formed, and it was 1 mill, and then over the course of the time since then, we've had 2 increases of 1/2 mill. And so the last one was 20 years ago. And so we're at the point now, we described a lot of reduction, a lot of really close scrutiny on the budget and making cuts where they can be made. But we're at the point where we cannot, well, I shouldn't say Libby and her staff can't make further cuts without really digging into programming. And that programming is what everybody really cherishes, whether it's the kids with the school still bringing classes across, or it's some of the services, bringing out to the senior center, that sort of thing. And so we as a committee are doing some of the work that Libby and her staff can't do, at least officially, which is to say we need to vote yes on this. And so part of our reason for coming to the city council is to get the city's support for this ballot measure through just a resolution saying, yeah, this sounds like a great idea because we got more funds. That's partly what I'm asking for. But the other thing is to make sure that all of you are aware, because this does impact your residents, my neighbors. And so hopefully it's something that if somebody says, we have 14 state ballot initiatives, how do they wade through that and making sure that they know that this one is on there and they need to look for it. So to get support, but also here to answer any questions.
Well, lots of fun things tend to happen there at the library. You change things up. Here very soon we're going to have the literary fest that I was alluding to, and I know you try to have all kinds of reading for kids, and I just think
pretty amazing this year.
Yeah, I think of all the different like extracurricular things. I know some get out of school and head right over it. And so.
And on Fridays as well, you guys support our 4-day school week.
But I would like to hear if council wants to support this, and please don't take it wrong if council not.
Sure.
But we'll get to the bottom of this. Janine, what are your thoughts on support or not for this measure?
Yeah, and I want to highlight something else that we didn't mention, but providing a safe gathering space for the community. I think it's called like third spaces, but places where people can just exist without paying for something. And the library is really the last one of those that exists in our society. So yeah, I'm definitely for that and other reasons in support of this.
All right, Scott, your thought?
Absolutely. This is one of the things I try to personally support a little bit.
Oh, well, good. All right. Jeremy, what do you think?
I think it's well worth our support.
Okay. Kate?
100%. I think there's 1,000 quotes out there, and I wish I could remember one, but I've been posting them onto my Facebook page religiously. But it is essential to a community to have a library, like Janine said, where somebody who needs help or just needs a safe space for an hour, 2 hours can get away and either decompress, calm down, or learn. So for that reason, 100% I'm behind this.
All right. Lisa?
I'm also 100% behind this. I look at the library as one of the last few equalizers in our society, and our library has been really amazing. They don't ban books. I feel like we're all, human people who can figure things out or figure things out for our kids. But it supports access to all the things for all the people. And there are very few, just like there are very few third spaces, there are very few spaces that support that kind of access for everyone.
All right. Well, as I was mentioning, I'm sure Lisa and perhaps Kate had telegraphed us that this would probably be coming. I didn't know, mean, I guess I felt it would be enthusiastically, received, but some of it frankly depends on the dollars and cents, and I hadn't seen that until recently, and it seemed to be modest. So, anyways, thank you, very much. Yes?
I do have a question. Is there, in other situations, we've been asked to put a letter out there so that the city of, Idaho Springs is openly supporting this measure. Is that something that we can do in this instance?
Oh, Kate, I'm sorry, it's actually, one of the.
I just wanted to make sure that. it was-
Yeah, we're actually going to, we were either gonna support it or deny
I just wanna say
support
it again.
for it, so. Yeah, we will be taking some official action on this.
Tonight.
Yeah, and let me see.
I just would like to say also, something that didn't come up is the library hasn't asked for a mill levy in 20 years. So they've been operating with 2 mill levies for 20 years, and they've really done a lot to stretch the budget as much as possible. And I feel like, what is a mill levy? It's like 50 to 70 bucks, depending on the value of your house.
Yeah, it's 53 cents per month per 100,000 of your market value of your house. So $400,000 house, it's an increase of about 25 bucks.
A year.
A year, yeah. And one of the things around that increase, because I know that taxes, especially in current situation, are under a lot of scrutiny. And a lot of times, especially here in Clear Creek, we have so many people passing through our county and taking advantage of the things that taxpayers, that we all pay for. But the library district is Clear Creek for Clear Creek. You have to be a member of the library in order to take advantage of all this great stuff. Yes, we have tourists that stop by, use the restroom, maybe buy a sale rack or whatever. But all these services are for Clear Creek residents. And I want to emphasize that. That's really important for us to remember. This is an investment in our neighbors.
And they're free
our
of charge.
Beyond the taxes. I do want to be very transparent about that.
Right.
You're
That's
right.
fine, but-
There's no additional cost for this stuff.
Well, I actually had a conversation, I'm gonna say this and I'll hush up. I had a conversation with Libby when we were talking about this. And I said, oh, well, programming is one of our higher costs. Maybe we should charge people $10. And I didn't even get the words out of my mouth. And Libby said, no, we don't charge for programs. And I think that is a principle that's hard to stick to and one that I think is really valuable for our community.
Especially since some of our adult programs are, not only have they been around for 25 years, they're popular and they're a little pricey, but people have, this is like a tradition to make wreaths at Christmas time. And the people that have been doing it for 25, 30 years are excited to go. Mixology, which is a Halloween celebration now that Cooper's in Georgetown helps us with. People are gnawing at the bit to get the ticket to go to that thing for free. So, and that's partnerships that we're bringing in. That's not just the library funding it. It is actually people who feel so strongly about the library that they want to help us as well. So that's enormous.
Well, 2 observations. And one is, I think the library did themselves a favor by being proactive on this. I mean, clearly you have taken steps to live within your means as long as you could. And then the second thing is, people are very, very burned out on every time they turn around, there's some other tax increase, particularly right now. So I think you were smart to have the request modest, because in my opinion, this will fly.
So I'm hoping it does.
And just a housekeeping note, this will be our first resolution tonight. It's resolution number 22 in council's packet. And just from going around the table, it looks very good. So anyways, does anybody have anything further before we move to the next item? All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in and talking with us.
Very much appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, sure. All right, next up, we are going to talk about affordable housing sites. Please, come on up. ED Studios is here with us. And you're out doing your homework. We appreciate you evaluating these sites for us. Of course.
I may just throw a few two cents in before you two jump in, just to set the stage a little bit.
Sure.
EB Studios here has been contracted, I guess, with the city to provide assessments and potential plans for housing on a few of city-owned properties or soon-to-be-owned properties around the city that might be appropriate for housing, how much housing. Part of this is assessing what might be possible. I believe that the purpose of this work session item is to share the progress that's been made so far, ask for direction as possible to see maybe where to go from here. One other caveat before I let them jump right in, and I'll pull up the plans that were in the packet, and I'll pull up ClearMap to kind of give a context overall of where we're specifically talking in the broader context of the city. One caveat I have with all this is I don't necessarily, like at this point, it's an assessment and it's an evaluation rather than a plan to actually build these units in any super near term.
Right.
We would have to figure out a strategy on how to fund construction and how to actually construct it, whether it's a housing authority sort of thing, whether we work with the developer, how that works. So that's the one caveat, is I don't know how quickly we'll be moving forward, but definitely want to do so. So with that, and the other caveat will be that some of these parcels will require some city process like a rezoning or something like that, almost necessarily, just because it's either not annexed yet or it's just for some reason or another needs to be rezoned. So
Right, or a variance or two, depending on the site.
right, something like that, certainly. So with that, I'll just share my screen. I'll pass it on to two of you, and I can hopefully answer questions on staff's behalf as well as possible too. So perfect. And I'll pull up. Would it be helpful to pull up just the broader city map or just the specific parcel to start? Do you think?
What do we want to start with?
Maybe the broader city maps kind of show where all three are to start with.
All right.
Sure.
Dive in from there.
Sounds good. Okay, so pull this up. So quite a broad view of the city at this point. The first one chronologically in the packet was the site that we've talked about previously that the city is currently purchasing for senior housing. That's along 103, just adjacent to the cemetery, which is this larger parcel. The second property in the packet, sure, will be in this area. It's right here, and I've just pulled up one of the parcels. So it's actually these four parcels, this triangle here, quite a small site. If you've driven that area, there's currently a curb cut on the south end. I believe also on the west. It's just quite a small city parcel. And then the third property is on the east end along Riverside.
Yeah, and this last one that he's gonna pull up, the property actually is on both sides of the road. So there's like 110 feet of creek front, and there's about 130 feet of road frontage.
That parcel on the south side is drainage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, they do have it depicted for parking. Just basically, you know how the current parking is under that metal canopy? The parking that's depicted in the drawing is like head in, one lane only over on the other side of the street.
Right, so you'll see the general area. So this is actually quite a large city-owned parcel. A lot of it is unbuildable.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of steepness of
Yeah,
slope.
it's just
and
this end over here on the
access
left,
would be this kind of
And that
western
is not
portion.
under the power lines.
Right, its existing use is just a city parking lot. It's a free lot and it's a 24-hour.
If you look on about a 45-degree angle, you can actually see the white telltale lines of the power lines. And you can park under them, that you can't build on.
Right, so that's quite a constraint. So with that, that's jumped around, we've got those three parcels. I'll then pull up the plans that are in the packet, have them larger on the screen, and for anyone who's joining us online.
That third lot, it does serve as overflow parking for the townhomes down in that area that have limited parking in front of their homes. And it could congest, if we're limiting that parking, we're just pushing that parking to the street. That's only a 2-lane street that we still allow parking on.
Right. Right, okay, so I've now pulled up the plans for that Highway 103 property, which as mentioned, we are in the process of purchasing for senior housing.
Yeah, and we have paid half, and Al Brown agreed to wait on that second half and get it, the last payment in January, so that we could appropriate the money for 2025. And I think EV Studios has the driveway in essentially about where it is, the current driveway is. Do I have that correct?
It's, I think, a little bit further east from where Al's
Okay.
driveway is
All right.
currently, but not by much.
Yeah.
But if you're driving down 103, it gives you a good kind of benchmark for where it might be. My name is Matt Svoboda with EV Studio. I'm an architect.
Yeah, he's gonna introduce yourself.
Yeah, sorry.
Roxy Jacobson, architect also, but I'll let Matt take it away, he's gonna do it most of it.
Sure, but as was pointed out, this is actually a rather large chunk of land, and most of these, our primary goal was sort of to assess what would fit, basically, like if you could and would build something here, what could we actually fit in there based on the geographic constraints, zoning constraints, all the setbacks, all those kind of things. And so, in all of these cases, we're not even starting to think about what these things will look like, just more about how many units can we get in here, what kind of density or machine. So, I stopped trying to turn around, I'll look at this, but I've got a copy of it here. But so obviously we have a lot more opportunity here with the focus on senior housing. We have a lot more parking that's actually required for staff for senior housing for this kind of a facility and for visitors, and not as much for residents. It's like the zoning code's usually pretty strict and give pretty clear guidelines, those sort of things. That's what all this parking represents. This is just more or less a placeholder to kind of say, here's how many cars and how much parking we think would be necessary for 54 units across this site. In some of our early conversations, some of the key things that we really want to focus on, we're trying to get the housing as close to 103 as possible to kind of give it a wall, to give it a presence, and to not just have a parking lot kind of being felt off of 103. And so that's why things are sort of oriented the way they are. We also were given direction as to try to look at a taller structure here. So we're showing 3 stories, which will still allow for wood construction, which is pretty reasonable in cost, but can give us a little bit of a higher density. Obviously, could we get more units on this site? Yeah, we'd have to increase parking along with that as well. But I think one of the things that we really liked about the way something like this could lay out was the fact that it gives us the opportunity to create really more of a boulevard feel along 103 to serve as a secondary entrance to the town. And so it's and so for that reason, we've focused on putting the parking towards the back, the units towards the front, giving them a taller aspect, so they actually provide sort of a gate and a passageway into the entire community there. And we've shown it phased into sections, primarily for the reason to where the convenience for Al's home, actually, which would be more or less under the western building that you see here, with the idea that phase 1 would be the eastern half, and then at the completion of that, I think we even talked about it, Al might even consider like moving into to the eastern half, like at that point. But then the western half then will be built as a second phase. And so that's sort of a general review of what we're looking at here. Obviously, the topography on the southern edge is actually quite steep, getting up to the cemetery. And so there's a little bit of digging in and retainage that would have to happen at the back to make this work. But we've tried to lay it, but obviously this is very preliminary. We've tried to lay it out in such a way to sort of minimize that as much as possible.
There is a slender parcel of land directly to the east of this, which we considered using as either primary or even a secondary entrance to the site. But its steepness allows such that it really would only serve as a passage. It would be another road on that side, and we really wouldn't have room to have anything else on that site. You couldn't put more townhomes there or more other dense housing opportunities. It's a little too narrow and too steep to sort of be practical. And so for this exercise, we sort of set that aside. And so we're focusing just on house property. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else to cover. So,
No, your unit mix is up there, the
Yeah, I was
Once.
wondering about that.
I-
So
and
what's
I-
the unit mix?
I think what we had done is I had used the zoning code actually allows for minimums for each of these. And so what I did, I did a 50-50 because this is meant to be sort of a placeholder, generally speaking, that if you were to do a 50-50 mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, then, which is actually higher than usual. Most facilities like this are far closer to like, 2/3, one bedroom, and so this
I
is.
actually was gonna inject that.
Yeah.
That's right, because this is,
These-
so,
These are gonna be affordable, so.
that's right.
Yeah,
One of the reasons we lay it out this way is it serves as sort of a worst case scenario in that sense, because obviously there's a lot of space that's gonna be carved out of this for common areas. That if you have 2 different wings, it's like you might actually need 2 separate dining rooms, 2 separate cafeterias, all those sort of things. And so all that is taken into account here. We're accounting for circulation space and all that sort of thing. And so we think 27 units in each of these is actually a modest estimate. We could actually put more if we get closer to where it's more likely to be more of like a 2/3, 1/3.
So is that the
So-
58 units max? Is that what it
That's
says?
No.
54, I think is what I'm showing on here.
Oh, it says unit count size allowed, 1,500 square feet per unit.
That's,
What is that?
that's
Because the size
based
of
on the zone, that's based on the zoning code.
Well,
I mean, the total site for the height, I think.
and that
Okay,
takes
but the
the,
size of it is less than
that takes the assumption also that, because we haven't annexed this parcel because we don't own it completely yet. That takes into consideration the assumption that R3 would be the appropriate zone because all of the additional area north of this site is also already R3. We could theoretically, when we were to annex it into a higher density zone at higher density as well, if there's the justification.
So I'm assuming this project would be similar to the assistance that the other projects have, right? It's not full, it's not senior assisted housing, anything like that, I mean, where it's.
well, it may be, just because I would point out, the problem we have right now is that the two, but when you think about senior housing with Mitchell White building, or with Project Support building here in downtown, they're so small, you really could never, in my opinion anyways, have like a nursing station where somebody could, buzz to get help getting dressed or bathing or what have you. You don't have economies of scale. If you ended up with, 50, 60, 70 units, I might actually be able to make that happen. I mean,
And my question would be, is there a bigger need for that than what we currently have? But then you're talking about a much more need for, a staff on something that's full
well,
of
yeah,
citizens.
and Scott, I think we all know, the city and the county would not be in a position to bear the cost. We would have to have a government partner, and that's typically how these
Right,
operate.
yeah, we wouldn't be able to run.
No.
So my question too is on the 2-bedroom mix. What is a situation where senior housing has 2 bedrooms?
That's why I think most would be,
One bedroom.
especially when you're in an affordable situation. It's a subsidized situation, and my humble opinion is
One
that
bedroom.
overwhelmingly would be 1 bedroom.
If we did do your idea, which is, you said it's kind of out there with having a nursing station at this unit, would it be possible to do it in a higher density so that we could get accommodations for the nursing staff? So that if they're up here working a 48-hour shift, they could have someplace that, maybe it is more along the lines of what, a shared area because they live down the hill, but they're working from.
And can I tell you what else I have personally lived through, and I'm sure Jeremy has seen this a number of times as well. You have nurses that would come to work at Life Care, for example, they can't leave because there's no way to rotate staff sometimes with weather events. It's very dedicated, but they will sometimes spend the night at the facility just so they could be there in the morning or something. I can remember one time my wife was actually picked up by the fire department and taken to Aurora Regional Medical Center. Just that time they were having to get staff around with some four-wheel drive type of emergency equipment and stuff, you know, so you're right on the staffing having a place, but also just, you know, for the staffing crunches that sometimes happen in mountain communities.
I wouldn't say full-time living, but someplace like with the fire station, they have places that people can bunk down there if they're on a 48, you know, whatever, the nursing staff, a really hard schedule, so I'm not sure what they are.
I think to answer that question, the beauty of this site in some ways is that since it's not currently zoned, when we annex it, we would have to zone it. We assumed kind of the obvious zoning because it's directly adjacent to an existing zone district that allows for multifamily residential, but we could, you know, do a land development zoning or something to that effect that creates unique standards for things like parking, for things like employee housing units, for density and the like.
Isn't this deed restricted? Aren't we buying this though? Deed restricted?
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
yeah.
so, okay. I would hesitate to get into assisted living, like, I would like us to do affordable housing. I don't know if I would like the city to do
Well,
assisted
you, but
living.
we can always leave that door open.
Yeah, right.
There isn't, in fact, Al specifically told me that he would like to see some type of assistance. He understands a lot of that is dependent on government funding.
Right.
So, you know, that's why it's not gonna be written into the contract, although that the perpetuity aspect of it always being for affordable senior living will be. But, you know, his own father lived in a facility where he was able to transition when he reached a stage where he needed help.
Oh, I
He
think we
stayed
need
right
it.
there in the community. Because right now, you know, you've heard me cry about this. We will send you not even to a neighboring county. Because we have no place in this county. They usually have a waiting list in Evergreen. Sometimes you're sent all the way to Aurora because that's where we have bed for you.
You know, it kind of makes sense. I'm sorry, Scott, go ahead.
Well, I'm not in tune with how that works, but I question how does our current senior project determine this person can't live there anymore?
Well,
They need
It
full
would be nice if
assistance
they had a
because it's a
transition,
family decision as well, but
right?
sometimes the senior doesn't want to go
No.
to the assisted living. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, he probably doesn't. I wanna
probably not
stay
gonna
right
like that.
here.
Yeah, you're gonna drive
So
me
you
out.
gotta force me.
But what,
Oh, sorry.
but what I was thinking is this, so we have a housing crunch in town and a lot of that is an age in place mentality, right? So we want to encourage that. The city's talked about that multiple times. However, when it becomes a burden to live in your house on your own, it would be nice that the places that are for, like, I can still live on my own, I just can't take care of the house on my own. But these are opening up for the people that, like Scott says, have to transition to the next level. And so that would be, we at least have it set up so that it can be the next level, because what it's ultimately doing is opening up housing for younger people to move into our towns, which is what we need, a
Is there
rejuvenation of
2
our
or 3
towns.
levels? Or do you go straight from what we have to assisted nurse care? Or
Yeah,
is there
and
like a
I don't
transition
know the
in
answer to
between
that.
there?
Yeah.
or-
Yeah, and Scott, I'm afraid I don't know, but I'm delighted to say we do have people in our community that are pretty up to speed on that.
Did your hauler space account for elevators?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm sorry to get on that tangent, but I just think
No, it's.
it's always been critical here. You could live 90 years of your life in Clear Creek County. And as soon as you need help dressing or bathing, then, you know, you may find yourself in Aurora, seldom getting a family visit because of the distances people are then having to travel. It's really been quite an injustice.
And I don't know, but maybe there's a hard time even finding the place in Aurora.
Oh, yeah.
because there
Oh, yeah.
might not be enough.
100%, Scott.
What does our waiting list look like for the senior centers? Do you know?
Yeah, I can tell you it's a sick joke. Like you'll never live long enough because it was double subscribed.
Oh, wow.
So is it
And,
like 100 people?
and by the
or-
way, Donna Klein told me the first tier are our county residents. The second tier would be family members, would make sense, of family residents, right? Well, they've never, ever been able to get to the second tier. And they have 4 tiers going down to out of the community and even out of state. You're in tier 4. Well, nobody has to worry about it. They've never even gone to tier 2 yet, ever.
Well, I know there's like a 2-year wait, but what does that look like in terms of how many names are removed?
Oh, and that's why I promise you, it's way beyond 2 years. Not, that's would be a dream, because a typical year, they only have a couple open up.
I mean,
And
let's face it, this is not a thing I even wanna, like, you're talking about fatalities here at this
Yeah.
point in time. So it's like, we don't want them to die, we want them to stay as long alive as long as possible.
of course, and I'm sorry.
It's good, it's good news. So
I'm sorry that we got on that
Yeah.
tangent, but I just want to move on with EV Studios. Well, I promise, we're gonna work on this some more, because this is a pet project for the community. I think you can tell we all feel very strongly about it.
One
Yeah.
question for the architect, the half space per unit, right, is the fact that a lot of these seniors don't have vehicles, right?
Correct.
So that's the way the parking is plotted.
I think that last thing on this one is, we've been talking a lot about that pedestrian bridge grant, reconnecting communities, which we'll be applying for soon. Part of that is an expansion of scope to include interchange, this area of Highway 103 improvements as well. Kind of thinking ahead towards, if there's folks here who are still quite mobile, having a pedestrian or bike access that's safe downtown might be quite a benefit.
So,
I'm gonna get the best for both parts.
oh, yeah. It'll be,
I'm there.
it'd be like Arizona.
Yeah.
Should I'll move on to the next,
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. This is that real tight spot, that's down, a lot of you remember, it is kind of at the beginning of a mobile home park, towards the west end.
it's currently, directly in R1 zoning and R2 zoning. It's currently zoned R1, but this proposal takes into, account of potential rezoning to R2 to increase the density a little bit.
And by the way, this would not be without controversy. Neighbors park with impunity on this, they have for years. So but it is ours.
But this is a good thing for it to turn into, Chuck. We're not talking about taking it away and making it something.
Yeah.
I think it's something that people would understand the value
We
of.
do have a challenge though, as far as some of our city property, with people thinking that they own our
I
city
know,
property,
I know.
so sometimes, at some point, you have to bite the bullet here.
Is this, what's the parking requirements? I mean,
We need 3 spaces for this, and there's actually 4 illustrated. But
what
remember,
what will be the parking rights for the individuals of the neighborhood?
Oh.
Is it just first come, first served? Well, I mean, can someone park there for 2 weeks or?
Oh, you mean in the
This would
parking lot?
be, this is in conjunction with the duplex, so they would just be parking for residents of that duplex.
The site obviously has lots of constraints which create a natural fun. And so for.
Welcome to Idaho Springs.
That's right, that's right. Which makes it kind of fun, but it makes it pretty constrained, and so it's not that, doesn't take too long to see like how constrained this actually is, how parking would actually be achieved, and the parking ends up really kind of driving everything. This is how much you can park, and so this is how many units you can have.
and this is what I was kind of bringing up in my earlier statement about there may be a property that needs a variance or 2. And this was actually one that came to my mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory, but we looked at it as more or less as a duplex. That's what we talked about, because it seemed like about 2 units where you could fit two small ones side by side, longer ones stacked horizontally. Either way, the stair, 4 parking spots, direct access right off the liner because it's more practical for topographically speaking. That's about what we're gonna fit on the site, I think.
Yeah.
It'll be a interesting triangular shaped building. That will work. This is one of the ones I'm actually the most excited about actually getting in there and seeing what it might actually look like. I think it could be spectacular. I think it'd be really, really nice. It's just, it's very, and by spectacular, I'm not talking about like. It's one of those things with like, I realize when I say spectacular, it's not what it was. Spectacular for me just means
Good
it's
use of
interesting.
space.
It has, well, it's a good, yeah, exactly. It's in some ways, it's like, it's practical, it fills its space, it fulfills its need, and it does it in a way that's handsome and appropriate. And to me, that's spectacular. People envision fountains and statues, that kind of stuff.
Rezoning this to an R2 wouldn't be a big deal.
Sorry.
I'm happy that you keep green space around it, because while I'm all for use the space that we have, having green space, having people feel like it's not just an apartment block, I think is important.
Sorry, Paul, did I hear you mention R2?
Yeah, rezoning that area to an R2 wouldn't be a big deal, because we have R3 right across the street on Minor Street.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it seems like it's a natural buffer zone,
yeah.
right, between the 1 and 3.
All right.
Okay,
Any further questions on this one? All right.
okay, so as give just a zoning chat, the parcel to the south, this odd shaped polygon parcel with the drainage is zoned R2 right now. The parcel to the north is all zoned park at the moment, so that for any development would require a zoning process.
And you see the bulk of the parking is down in this lower left. And if you can envision the way that the apartment parking, they have some covered parking under these metal roofs, and they would basically be facing the cars that we've depicted here as parking for our parcel. And there is a like a swale pretty close to the middle of that property that drains. And where the numbered building, the 1458, you see we have a pavement area there that Paul was talking about, has some overflow, is from some of the surrounding folks, park things in there.
Long term.
Very.
Yes.
And so there's no way to build down on the eastern side where all the park area is?
Yeah, and that, you know,
Because that doesn't,
it's,
remember.
it would, you know,
The line is
honestly,
right there.
Lisa, this one of those things where it would cost you so much money.
Move the line.
Yeah,
That
just,
believers.
yeah,
It's-
it's too bad.
Really, the place where we've drawn those rectangles, it's like the only practical spot. At the back of those are already going to be eating into the hillside quite a bit. And so we actually need to take the entire thing and actually raise even the lowest level to its highest practical elevation in order to keep it above grade at the back. So we're gonna have ramps from our parking areas up to that spot between the property line, not just the power lines, but even just the easement for the power lines, which you also can't build under. And the topography at the back, it leaves us with a slim little spot there, plus honoring the setback from Riverside Drive itself. So that leaves us with a little bit of spot there. So we're showing 12 loading units sitting there.
And I have seen the power company have some flexibility on the easement.
Okay.
Sometimes it's drawn out like 75 feet either side of center line.
Right.
And I have seen 100 foot, accepted. That just kind of depends on what you're doing, so, and what the need is.
Sure.
We could certainly, when we get further along, we could engage Excel and see what the temperature is after that.
I have a question on this property and the last property. Is this something we're proposing the city as a developer? How's this getting developed?
Well, I'll give you an example. It could, and this is just an example, it could be as simple as signing a lease with another nonprofit.
Like affordable housing?
Exactly,
Right.
if they're after our goals, and I'll just throw a name out.
Yeah.
Like a Habitat for
That's
Humanity,
what I'm thinking. you know?
They deed restrict, they're after the same things that we're after with affordable housing. They have a lot of donated time and donated material. I mean, it could be, you know, as simple as accomplishing a goal by just signing and they are amenable to, long-term, you know,
And
like.
they are looking,
leases.
they're definitely looking in this area.
Yeah.
this park.
Well, the city doesn't have staff to run a development,
Right,
Yeah, but
right.
they-
so we have to team up. with
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah.
But if we're doing the multi-jurisdictional housing authority, this can go right into that.
Yeah.
Well, and we would have,
partner with
and when I say
somebody.
we, I mean, the entire county would have full-time people even, for this, so it wouldn't be as burdensome on the city.
So between these last two sites, that's an extra 14 apartments.
Well, there's 12 here,
12 and then two.
and then,
duplex.
yep.
Yes.
So, and how short are we on housing?
Oh, at least 300.
I know the county said he was 300, the county, George says it was like
250.
322.
Well,
Sure,
but George, I
50.
promise I'm not putting words in his mouth. He'd be the first to, let you know, those are from figures that were gathered 7 years ago.
Oh, so we need more than
And,
that in
and,
affordable
and
housing.
you know, to put it in perspective, the city's sales tax has about doubled in 7 years. So I'm just saying we have a lot of economic activity that is driven by businesses and employees. And therein lies, you know, the rub, because I would suggest that the need is far, far greater than what was reflected in the housing report.
Is there that prop, is it 1, 2, 3, whatever, is there like specific unit requirements with that? Or is that,
So you're supposed to increase your affordable housing stock 3% a year. And by the way, it's not the end of the world if you reach for a goal and you don't make it. What happens if you don't succeed is you have to sit out a year. They don't claw anything back from you, but you can't apply for additional 1, 2, 3 funds for a year because you didn't meet your goals. That's the only thing. You don't lose anything. But I think in our case, we would far surpass that 3% goal, because any way you slice it, there would be a large number of units going in for senior affordable housing. It's still affordable housing, albeit set aside for seniors, it still counts.
Yes, but our county is 12 years older than the rest of Colorado on average, so.
We
And
are,
if you remember, for those of you that were at that meeting on last Monday night, every single group asked for affordable senior housing.
yes, they did, and really I thought that speaks volumes about the type of people in our community that they think about the elderly, so, you know, that's really, I found it very, very nice that, you know, you're right, Lisa, every table asked for that.
Affordable housing, affordable senior housing and assisted living, they asked for both.
Yeah, but I think what EV Studios has, just if you take their numbers right now, you know, we're into like, you know, 70, maybe more, or units, depending on what happens there by the cemetery, but probably at least, you know, 70 affordable units. We know that the old, somewhat out of date housing study said we need about 600 units, 300 of which affordable, and the greatest need within that 300 is in the 60 to 80% of AMI. So I would suggest that number has only gone up, and probably significantly in 7 years.
Just curious, what are the size of these units and the last duplex, what are the size of those?
I think these are also.
No, it's not on there.
These are, I can provide that for you, but I'm gonna say that these are,
Efficiency, right?
they are as compact as you think.
That's pretty compact.
Yeah.
And what I think, we're with affordability comes density, and
Yeah.
it's like, that's the only way you can hit it usually. So
Yeah.
these are tight units.
Square feet.
This
Somewhere around there, yes, I mean, this is,
does look like this duplex site are a little bigger. It mentions here, you know, 2 stories up to 1,700 square feet or so, 1 story, 822 square feet. So these ones, only 2 of them, you know, spacious.
It's very
That
spacious.
other one looks so tiny.
these are, I mean, I'm
And
showing
then
these
next
as
one's Dylan.
about 30 feet deep, you know, on average, so yeah, it's gonna be so. Yes.
Yeah, all the studio.
I don't know, used to be HUD minimum of 400 square feet.
They're larger than that.
I saw a qualifier on that last HUD statistic. As long as you can meet the other parameters, you can have a smaller unit than, but just to throw a number out, I believe the old number was about 400 square feet, but you know, I suppose if you laid something out well, without a hallway, you know, maybe you get away with something smaller.
They're certainly doing studios these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen in the county though are about 500 square feet, and that, when I've looked at them, that is, one person could live comfortably even with a dog. Like, that's how I look at it, could one person and a dog live there?
I would agree with you. I happen to own some that exact size.
There is allowances, part of Prop 123, which Janine mentioned, is also creating new standards that make the construction of affordable housing or incentivize affordable housing, make it easier to accomplish. And part of that would allow for things like reduced square footage in exchange for, say, additional common space or additional reduction in AMI standards, things like that. And so that is something which I'll just dovetail on the conversation a little bit, is something that planning commission and a few members of council have mentioned as wanting to look into other carrots and sticks for housing generally, and might go along well with some of these projects that the city wants to work on.
All right, I have a question on Paul's point about the neighbors using that property. Do you think, albeit is the current housing have proper parking? Because it was under regulation when that was built, but what's your feeling as far as the parking allowance for those existing units?
Well,
Are they meeting current standards?
I would guess from a very minimum standards, I don't know, are these 2-bedroom units, 1-bedroom units?
2-bedroom.
If you say it's a 2-bedroom unit, and it's under 800 square feet, it would be 1.5 spaces per unit per code, which would be 2 spaces. And I would guess functionally it's not being used that way, but all of these do have a garage.
And
Like a one-car garage and a driveway in front of it, so
that's 2
technically
spots, right?
there are 2 spaces on each lot.
I think
I
some
would
of them are
guess.
3-bedroom.
And if it's 3-bedroom, then it would be a 2-space requirement rather than 1.5. And so that
Their own.
obviously a lot of
People have more cars than that.
either have more cars or you don't use a group because it's a small building. you
As a
use-
As a visitor, there's cars everywhere.
Yeah,
It's already congested down there with cars parked, and like I said, that road when it was built did not allow for travel lane, parking lane. There's only 2 travel lanes there that are being parked in.
certainly this development as proposed would meet the minimum parking for these units. Obviously, it would exacerbate a potential congestion issue in that area, but yeah, to your point, yeah, I believe they do have the minimum required, whether it's used as intended or used for storage or what have you.
All right, any questions for EV Studios?
Are we good to keep looking at EV studios as we move forward, like, you know, as we move forward with purchasing house property, if there's other properties that we look at? Are we contract with them more than just this?
Well, we needed to get an assessment right now, so I feel that we have a pretty good assessment here.
We have to
And,
do a good job with tiny little spaces.
Yeah. well, and they
These
had
are not
to,
easy.
they had to exercise some
They're fun.
outside of the box.
They are.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming at it with the parking, like, you know, first of mine. Honestly, it's a really big problem of mine, but I do appreciate that you guys were like, okay, we need to make sure that we've got that down, right? And the open space as well.
All right, do you have anything further for us?
I don't think so.
All right. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
I really appreciate the work. And we are gonna talk about Virginia Canyon Mountain Bike Park next. Gary?
Just mountain park,
Well-
not mountain bike park.
Oh, that's right. And Gil, come on up.
I think you all know me, Gary Moore, Executive Director, Colorado Mountain Bike Association. Probably fewer of you have had the chance to meet Gil McCormick. Gil is our Trails Program Director and probably spends more time in Virginia Canyon and up in your hills than the Big Horn Sheep.
Yeah, you probably know.
Yeah. So we'll try to give you a brief update. I think got a lot to accomplish here in the last 35 minutes of the work session. The headline is that we pretty much, I'm gonna go with today, finished phase 2.
All right.
So that includes everything on the map that I handed out. It's a little more user-friendly than the maps that were used for planning and that are in the packet. So we are moving towards bringing public out this week. We're going to communicate tomorrow to COMA members, a couple of sneak preview days for them. And then on Thursday, we will let the general public know that Friday will be the official public opening for everything that you see here on that map. We've had, as a means to get here, we've had a lot of conversations about parking. We've already started communicating about parking. We've done a couple of different parking maps, the one that's included on this trailhead map, and then a separate one that has more detail and is easier to share around. We sent that out about a week and a half ago to our 7,800 newsletter recipients and shared that out on social media as well to probably another 10 to 15,000 people that see that there. Week and a half ago, we had the EMS morning, a walkthrough where we took all of city and county EMS officials, first responders, as well as Alpine Rescue up there on the trails and showed everybody around, got them familiar with kind of ingress, egress, tested out our ideas for how to get people to the center of the system, or what we call the hub on this map. That's going to be kind of the central spot, the easiest spot to get four-wheelers and larger equipment to up the Morningstar Trail, which comes off of Virginia Canyon. That is also the only entrance to the park that is on city property. So with that having gone all pretty well, we had a little bit of a sneak preview night last week. 36 people came up that hadn't been at the park yet. Took them up on the trails, showed them around, and everybody just had a great time. No injuries. Parking seemed to work fairly well. We'll see. It's obviously going to be a lot more cars coming to town.
Did you put your signs out?
Huh?
And I still have to put out a few of the parking, like, yes, please park here signs along Colorado Boulevard, but I got up with your help, all the directional signs from around the town, so that if you park, say, on Highway 103, or you park the ball field, or you park in Colorado, you find the arrow, you follow the greenway, end up at the trailhead.
Yeah, that's the cool part, is that the greenway just in the end, it goes right through town and takes you right to where the start of the trails are.
I see on this official map that you have in blue on the right-hand side along Riverside, that's residential parking, do not park there.
Correct.
I'd like to have that parking sign extended throughout Sunnyside and all the neighborhoods to the west.
Riverside, Virginia Wall.
All of it.
All that stuff.
That is all
There was talk of that.
Restricted parking.
And I
We've
think
already put up some residential parking only signs down in that Riverside area. We have not put any on Virginia yet with the construction going in and then being torn up with construction.
Well, I know, but I'm talking Wall Street, Virginia,
But are
Riverside.
you talking about putting it on the map so that?
Yeah,
I want it everywhere.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
map is what they're looking at.
Yeah, this
So
map
you
looks like
want
you
Oh,
can park
this-
right there.
This
And I'm-
map, to be clear, this map is the kiosk map,
Okay.
right? So
So on the
there's a
kiosk,
separate one that is more of a blow up.
both
that
of them.
is
and I
available.
believe
All of
that
them.
one.
And it has that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I look like I'm kidding, but I'm really
No,
not
we
kidding.
know.
Okay,
We've
good.
talked about Wall Street a lot.
yeah, the official parking
You know,
map already has it,
I was
so
being facetious.
we'll add that.
Noted, for sure. And we have all the people here that can help make that happen. Anything you want to share about getting
So,
to phase 2
one
now?
thing
and
you
getting that
said
started?
about the
Yeah.
emergency access, so a vehicle can travel on that?
Not a full size, like pickup truck, more of a razor side by side.
That's what they'd be using.
That's what we did use. We took those out and they were using it today. How big is Bob's? I assume that was Bob's vehicle. It's probably 5 feet wide.
5 feet, yeah.
Yeah.
So the EMT people have access to that
Correct.
vehicle, or if an emergency?
Well, there are
were to happen,
vehicles, yeah.
There's gonna be vehicles that will.
Right, that was part of the exercise, was to have them bring out the equipment they expected to use and see if it worked. And then what else they may need beyond that, like a tow behind litter or those kinds of things. I don't know, Nate, if there were further conversations after that about equipment, whether or not anybody was gonna need to purchase anything additional.
Sure. I feel weird speaking on behalf of other emergency service agencies like EMS and fire and the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department had four-wheelers out there. The EMS, and the Alpine Rescue had like a side-by-side up the trail. So I think we're prepared now to open, but I also think there's an ongoing conversation of potentially more equipment as the park continues to grow and becomes more popular, especially, after the winter and then we get to the next full season. So,
One of them was on tracks,
No.
4-wheel tracks. It's pretty cool.
Minimize it.
So yeah, that's where we're at. We're getting ready to finally invite the public here. We've been involved with the formerly known Vitality Task Force, now the Business and Community Promotions Board. I remember all that right. So we've got a couple of the businesses that are already offering deals for trail users and couple of members to convince them to come into town and get oriented with local businesses, which we're pushing.
All right.
So we're pretty excited about that. I think whatever else we need to talk about tonight, because you've got it coming up on your full session agenda. Phase 3 funding has now been made available through the Argo and the fact that they're funded and moving forward. So that 400K that has been part of that development plan for 4 or 5 years has arrived. At least 200 grand of it was a week and a half ago. They're expecting the other 175 this week.
Yeah, I actually saw the letter from Brian McFarland asking Andy to turn in the invoice for the $175,000 reimbursement.
So that's being used to fund phase 3, which if you remember when we did the RFP for phase 2, we included that phase 3 as an optional scope so that we could just keep moving. Same builders, same oversight, same everything. So what we've done is a change order that you'll consider later on tonight. I think it's number 17. That lays out the scope for that, the funding for that, and what that accomplishes. The other thing that will also be on the agenda tonight is phase 4 funding, which are the trails that come after phase 3. I could give them names and numbers, but would be less informative to you. So we're looking now at how do we get funding in place to continue construction next spring after exhausting the phase 3 money over the winter.
Right.
So
And that
we're just trying to
actually
get
is
out ahead of
the
that.
third item under city administrator tonight.
Okay.
And it is grant in the amount of $250,000 for phase 4 trails construction.
That's the maximum grant ask in that program. We're still trying to line up partners that would have some private funding that would match that as well to give us a robust enough scope to be able to set an RFP during the next couple of months.
All right, any questions for Gary or Gil?
Thanks for the update.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
looking forward to
All in favor of libraries, by the way. Both my daughters work in a library post college, so we're all about.
Librarians like that, by
Good,
you.
good, good.
Still need the parking, that's not gonna
And
get
we
you.
could use some affordable housing.
Are they shushing you at home?
No, they're pretty good.
All right.
It's all women in my family. I listen a lot. So yeah, just kind of as a quick update, was there anything else you thought we should get into tonight, Bill?
I don't think so. One thing to mention is and I don't know, well, maybe I need to talk to you separately, Paul, but we do need a gate at the entrance to that Morningstar access trail off of Virginia Canyon. So I don't know if,
That's on Public Works. We'd already kind of discussed it with CMBA. Public Works will install probably a bollard there just to keep something large from going through, but we still want bikers and hikers to have access.
Yep.
Is that the plan?
It's not really considered an experiential trail, but I think it'd be a great hike and helps you make a loop out of there. It feels just more like a road than it does a trail. It's so wide.
So you're alluding at all the hours at Gil, right?
Yeah.
Gil puts up there, do you guys have the log of how many hours have been spent on all of this?
Well,
I know we're over 2,500 hours volunteer work.
Yeah,
this year,
This year, yeah. But as far as the rest of us,
yeah,
it's counted.
it's quite a bit.
all right,
It's a very rocky
anything,
bill.
anything further? All right, well,
Thanks,
thank you very
you guys.
much, I appreciate that update,
Cutting out.
looking forward to, Thursday.
Okay, do you want me to stick around for the full session when you guys get into this?
I think we'll be all right.
You think?
Yeah. Well, I'll ask, does council have, any further questions of Gary, about,
You want me to stick around for the full session, or you think you have
Well,
questions on the change order or the?
I think everything was pretty outlined in our
It's
packet,
pretty clear.
yeah. So I think you're good to go home unless you, I mean, you're welcome, Mr. Brown, if you'd like.
Yeah, no, you know.
But
go right
I
on.
think, I don't wanna chase you out of here, but I think we're gonna be, good on the motion.
Okay, if anything comes up, just shoot me a text, I'll be them.
Okay. All right,
Scary.
now, thank you, Gary. Next up, I believe we have had Carmen on the line at about 6:30. We are gonna talk about natural medicines and end it with a question for council about campaign finance complaints. So Carmen, hey, welcome. Good to see you.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Always a pleasure to see you. Quite the transition from mountain bike trails to magic mushrooms, psilocybin.
And both-
So,
They both
What's that?
will be injuring people, so.
all right.
But it's going like on magic mushrooms, that's what we're.
Some of you may have actually heard about this. Watching the news, other legislative bodies, local legislative bodies, are getting around to considering this issue. And I'm glad we had the agenda space and time tonight. I have as you can see in the memo that was in your packet, just sort of a general advisement for you about this bill, this state bill that is now in the process of being implemented concerning natural medicines, and then some questions for you about what, if anything, you want to do locally in response to that bill. So I hope and trust that you had time to read the memo that's in the packet. If not, for your brief education, as well as anybody who might be watching or listening to us, I'll just briefly summarize. At the last legislative session, actually in 23, the state adopted a bill that authorized the use of what are defined as natural medicines here in Colorado. Initially, within the scope of natural medicines under this bill, it's psilocybin and psilocin. Come 2026, the scope of natural medicines under this bill might be expanded if the state so authorizes that. But for the initial sort of release of this bill and its rollout, we're talking about psilocybin and psilocin. And for the better part of or I should say the first part of this year, 2024, the state busied itself with adopting some state rules and regulations concerning something that we're not here to talk about, which is the licensing of individuals to administer this medicine to people. Those folks under the bill are called facilitators. The licensing of facilitators, there are some extensive rules and qualifications for folks to be able to administer these substances to people who might want them or need them. And those were finished up in the spring of this year. And then the state began its work to adopt and promulgate rules on a matter that is of interest to us and other local governments, which are rules and regulations concerning the regulation of businesses known as natural medicine businesses. Now, much like marijuana, and some of you are on council when we considered as a city whether to authorize and allow and regulate marijuana businesses. Much like marijuana businesses, natural medicine businesses essentially fall into 4 categories. Those are centers, but under this bill, those are healing centers, and they're different than marijuana stores, and I'll touch upon that, cultivation facilities, testing facilities, and manufacturers. So we sort of have 4 types of businesses under this natural health medicine umbrella under this bill that are authorized to operate. And going back to healing centers, unlike marijuana, and I do want to make this clear, these are different kinds of facilities. These are not stores. You cannot and will not be able to go into a natural medicine healing center and purchase some psilocybins and or future natural medicines if those are authorized under the law, and then take those home for your own consumption or use wherever might be legal. Instead, the model set up by this bill and the regs that implement this bill treat these natural medicines like medicine. And again, hearkening back to the licensing of facilitators who are much like other kinds of health practitioners who have to be qualified to administer these medicines to people at these healing centers under the bill and the regs. Licensed facilitators administer these substances to folks who go to these centers, and they cannot take, or a customer or a patient, I should say, rather, at these centers cannot then take that substance home or remove them from the center. It's very much like any other sort of medicinal or healthcare experience that must occur wholly within that healing center. So also important under the bill as a distinction from marijuana business regulations are that this bill told local governments, you cannot, unlike marijuana, choose to whether or not to allow these kinds of natural medicine businesses locally. You must allow them. You may not prohibit them. So that's an important distinction too, and why it's important that we talk about this and I get your guidance on what you would like to do locally here tonight. The bill further says, lest local governments get tricky or clever, that you can't sort of zone them out by imposing restrictions that essentially prohibit them, right? We are authorized as local government to regulate them in a familiar phrase, time, place, and manner restrictions. So much like the First Amendment or other sorts of constitutional rights, we as local government cannot keep people from exercising those rights. Not that this is a constitutional one, but it is authorized under the legislation like one. We as local government can regulate the time, place, and manner in which these natural medicine businesses operate. So yes, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, can we limit the amount that we have in town, how many licenses we have?
I don't think a numerical cap would pass muster under this bill because, again, we are not authorized to prohibit them. Again, hearkening to, time, place, manner, I think a natural sort of numerical cap in a city the size of Idaho Springs will sort of naturally follow. There is a distance limitation that is built in to the law already. Distance limitation being how far they have to be from other kinds of things. Under the bill and the implementing regs, there is already a 1,000-foot restriction for these healing centers from schools and daycare facilities, licensed childcare facilities. So that distance limitation and buffer is already baked into the bill. You'll see in the memo that one of the options that you have that other local jurisdictions are also considering is whether or not other kinds of distance limitations are desired locally. Let's say distance limitations from parks or open space or city hall or other kinds of city-owned facilities. Those, in my opinion, would be fine. Again, not a, yeah, go ahead.
What about residential areas?
Yes. If you've been paying attention to the news, and perhaps you have, Kate, some jurisdictions, most notably Boulder, are considering legislation that imposes a distance limitation from residentially used property. That would also be permissible. My only word of caution again is we would need to be careful about distance limitations that effectively prohibit the location from any within the city. That we could not do. I know Dylan and I were corresponding earlier today about this issue, and he sort of looked big picture and initially at what sort of buffer zones would look like within the city, and we can talk a little bit about that. Oh, something happened to my screen.
Yes, I just pulled up these buffers that I had.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
So currently our only school officially, well, maybe officially the only one that would pass muster is the current Carlson Elementary. You can see there that buffer does not cover much of our, say, historic downtown district or commercial areas. Very limited. Now, I don't know if currently so I tracked a few other places just to see what it would do. This is the rec center, covers a broader section, and there is childcare there, although it's not, I don't know if it's licensed childcare or it's a daycare center, but
That's a good question.
But there's
is.
probably something reasonable to say that. And that covers, a lot of commercial that's west of the historic district. I also track the library, which of course has after school programs. It has third spaces for students and adults. That basically covers all of the historic district. And then just to really, and I didn't track all of these together. It would have been fun to see all the buffers on top of each other, but in a couple of hours I didn't have that capability. But I also track parks. So from Shelley Quinn, that covers a lot of the east side of the East End. CRC Park basically gets like everything up to and past the Safeway and the post office.
And Dylan, I'm gonna ask you too. Carmen and Dylan, so could the pot shops themselves become facilitators of this?
No.
Okay.
Nope. It's quite clear. Great question. It's quite clear under the bill and the implementing regs that these healing centers may not co-locate or commingle with licensed premise for alcohol or marijuana, whether that's medicinal or retail.
All right.
Just to clarify how I think this works when I've heard about it is like you go in and this person they like walk you through and you stay there. And I don't think you would leave until the effects have worn off.
Yeah, go out to your car and grab one.
Yeah, you're not
wandering.
wandering while you're having this experience. You're with that person and they're talking you through it, and then I believe you're leaving.
No, you're sober when you leave.
You're sober when you leave.
You're back to, and I'm just saying this, that hitting some limitations to it in our town, I'm just looking how far we can stretch that if we want to. That's
Is the intent to limit? Probably the entire town, but I would say we probably shouldn't do that. You know anybody has PTSD that uses this is a game
It's
changer.
powerful.
I have heard
It's
that.
powerful.
Access to this is makes PTSD people function.
I am not against it, Jeremy, just for the record.
I know, I'm just saying
yeah,
from.
yeah. I just wanted to see where we
my
could make
opinion,
our modifications.
Allowing access to Idaho Springs especially is.
Because they don't have to drive.
Fallout that comes from it. Especially if they abide by the rules. The rules are set up such that most of the people prior to the state legislature was leaving the state maintain that cycle. They
No, I'm very, might change our homeless situation.
Along with veterans, like people who've experienced like families and children I work with that cross over have these complex childhood traumatic experiences, other types of assault, that's
It's a game changer
accessing
for
it.
people's ability to function.
I mean, I can actually think of two facilitators, I think that would want to do this already in the city, so I think it's going to be something desirable.
No, I'm good with it because we have facilitators, like I really appreciate. I've read the same thing, this is a game changer for a lot of PTSD. My only concern is if we have growing facilities, like how much land are they going to take that we don't have? That is my only concern.
Maybe C2 though.
But if you read the regulation, it's sort of marijuana regulation. Yeah. This is very well regulated. Step. Better position now than we were.
So would council like to see legislation that imposes any sort of additional distance limitations? Is that perhaps what I couldn't see what Dylan shared, but are there additional distance limitations you would be interested in imposing locally beyond childcare facilities and schools?
No, it looks like unanimous, no.
Okay. So would, just so we know, under the state's legislation, if we roll with, again, as summarized in the memo, what Dylan and I would do if and when an application comes to locate one of these four kinds of facilities, we would look at our existing zoning code and analogize, right, any of these potential businesses to what we have locally, and they would be zoned and located appropriately, analogous to any other cultivation facility, right, which we already have with marijuana, any kind of products manufacturer, any kind of testing facility or laboratory. And for healing centers, I would imagine that, Dylan, let me know if you disagree, we'd probably analogize those to medical clinics, right, and places that offer other kinds of medicines that could be used or administered on premise. And council, we can see how this goes for a while, as with any land use. If a land use is established and then we change our zoning rules or other kinds of rules concerning where it can be, obviously we can't retroactively apply those to established businesses. But if you see how this rolls out and how this plays out locally, and you want to revisit this in a year or so, we can absolutely do that and then regulate in a different way going forward. So this conversation does not need to be done. I think everybody in Colorado is sort of wondering how this is going to turn out, and we can do the same.
Right, council, all right with that? Okay. Any further questions for Carmen regarding this matter? Then Carmen, we will bring up the all exciting campaign finance complaint. And
yes.
If the city would like to take things on themselves or just defer to the state.
Again, this might be an easy one for you, Mayor and Council, but I did think it necessary to check in with you. At the last legislative session, a bill was adopted, as you could see summarized in the second memo for me in this packet. A bill was adopted that authorizes Wonder and our staff, ultimately Diane, to refer any local FCPA or municipal campaign finance complaints to the Secretary of State. As it is now, any kind of local FCPA complaint on a local election issue would be handled, and we haven't had any, knocking on wood here, that I can remember, at least certainly not recently, but we would locally, our staff would be called upon to conduct any kind of a hearing on that kind of an FCPA complaint. The Secretary of State, certainly in my opinion, has lots more practice and resources to conduct those kinds of hearings and investigate those complaints. What the bill adopted requires of us and of you, if you wish to take advantage of that ability to kick those complaints and those hearings up to the Secretary of State, is to act by ordinance to do that. So prepared such an ordinance. It is ready to go if you give me the green light, but I do need the green light from you to put such an ordinance on a future agenda. If you would like to, let Wonder and Diane breathe easy and allow them to refer those kinds of complaints to the state.
And Wonder, to put you on the spot, and thank you for being here, I am just going to assume that you would prefer that these be referred to the state.
I would agree with that.
Okay, all right. Let me go around and ask council, would everybody be all right with this being referred to the state?
I think given how small we are, I think it's actually better if we kick it to the.
All right. All right. Okay, then it's unanimous.
Great, that's a good, and then, Lisa, that's a good point. What's interesting is, so often as a statutory municipality, we maybe feel like the little sister or brother of home rules. But in this bill, we have the advantage over home rules. All kinds of complaints as a statutory municipality, we're authorized to kick up and get out of our local house, as it were. And yet home rule municipalities, to Lisa's point, can only refer those complaints up if there is a quote conflict of interest. And I think in many communities, even home rule that are smaller like ours, there's kind of an inherent conflict of interest when everybody knows everybody and clerks know the people that they might be hearing complaints about, when clerks know the complaining party. So yay, as a statutory city, we have the advantage this time and we get to kick all our complaints up. So thank you, Mayor and Council. You will see an ordinance very soon that accomplishes that.
All right, well,
Thanks,
thank you very
Carmen.
much. Appreciate it. Carmen is gonna be with us through ordinance readings.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Carmen, and all right, it is 6:56, so everybody please take 5 and we'll convene at our regular time.
What do you wanna do? We're on your head.
Not yet.
So much better.
Like calling them on a grenade or something. Telling you, that's fascinating.
The first part of August. Put it away like it's supposed to. Cool.
Cool. All right, well, I got it, get it running. Hey, I would, sorry, Dylan, no rush, but let me know.
We are ready.
We're ready, all right. I would like to welcome everybody to the September 23rd, 2024 regular council meeting for the city of Idaho Springs. We're gonna call it to order at 7:03. And a little housekeeping note, if anybody would like to speak during public comment, please sign up. We have the sheet over here on the end of the counter. And I'd like to start off with roll call, please.
Kate Collier. Here. Lisa Manifold. Here. Scott Pennell.
Here.
Jim Clark.
Here.
Janine Mariani. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones. Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Here, all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We have an agenda before us tonight. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda for the September 23rd, 2024 meeting.
Thank you, Janine. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Lisa. Any discussion of the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Does anyone tonight feel they have a conflict of interest?
I do, Mayor. For the bills for all like one.
All right, Jimmy. Anyone else? All right, then we will move on to approval of the minutes. And do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes from September 9th, 2024.
Thank you, Kate. Do I have a second? Second from Jeremy. And any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have bills before us this evening. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the bills to September 23rd of 2024.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, who's second? Oh, second, Kate. And any discussion of the bills? Hearing none. Thank you, Jimmy. And these will just be bills excluding Allied. And we have no questions of the bills that exclude Allied. Then roll call, please.
Kate Collier. Yes. Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Janine Mariani.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones. Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes. And do I have a motion for the bills for Allied Towing?
Make a motion to approve the bills for Allied Towing.
Thank you, Lisa. And do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Scott. And any discussion of the Allied Towing bills? Hearing none, roll call, or roll call, please.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
I can't on that one,
Well, this is the only matter.
but I do vote yes on the last one.
Okay.
But I wasn't called.
Janine Mariani. Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Thank you.
And next up is public comment. And everybody has 3 minutes during public comment. You speak whatever's on your mind. Please understand that there normally is not any back and forth with public comment. This is our time to listen.
Mayor, can I make a note, just if anyone has public comments about a agenda item, would it be more appropriate to make those comments during that, say, public hearing?
Sure.
As
Or
opposed to.
ordinance first or second reading.
No. Right,
Usually public comment is for something that's not on the agenda.
right.
Yeah.
Just
Typically, yeah, right. Yeah, and we're gonna have that opportunity because we do have at least a hearing tonight. So first up, we have a resident that would like to talk, I believe, about development, and they are at 1023 Minor Street. Chris, please come on up. Welcome.
Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
So name is Chris Koberl, Koeberl. Address is 1023 Minor.
Thank you.
So many of you obviously know me and what I do, so I'm going to take that hat off as a reporter right now and speak as a resident. As a reporter, hopefully you all realize it is fair, unbalanced. Nothing influences what I report. As a resident, I do need to speak to the council as just kind of a check-in. The number one word in my vocabulary during my career has been accountability. That's my job. And that's the job of everyone in here, is accountability. And when it comes to the 4 Points project, the field house, this council stated that they would be a gatekeeper to that progress, some complaints from residents. And that's what we're dealing with right now. Specifically right now, and I spoke with Mr. Crane earlier, and we had a very good dialogue about what's going on, but already we're having sewer backups. We're having surveying plots planted in our yards, not knowing exactly what they need. So like I said, I'm 1023 Minor. My neighbor to the east, 1027 Minor, is having the same sewer backup issues. 1019 Idaho Street is having sewer backups. 1027 Idaho Street is having sewer backups. What these residents are concerned about, in addition to obviously sewer backups, is honestly the responsivity of the Public Works Department. And that is hit or miss. And this is verbatim from neighbors. The responsivity from Public Works is yes or no, and it's spotty at best. So yes, they cleared some lines. But now what I hear over and over again is when we call, they don't respond. When we ask them to come out, they don't respond. And like I said, I had a conversation with Mr. Crane, and it was a good conversation, and I believe in his dedication to city services. But at the same time, the reality is it's not happening. And that needs to be addressed. We have issues with 4 Points, and we have the names and numbers of some people over there that are supposed to address our concerns. Already the concerns from these neighbors are seismologically. Dishes falling out of cabinets. Serious shaking of the houses all day long while they construct that. So where are we to go? And is this council receptive and even more responsive to issues like this that deal with a private contractor? The city is once again a gatekeeper to this community. You're our fail-safe. I just want to make sure that you are on our side when when it comes to issues like this. The other thing is too, I kind of got lost in the shuffle, but the 1.4 million that the city was going to provide 4 points for the 50 deed restricted apartments. I'm not sure where that is now. I'm not sure if that's still applicable. There hasn't been a whole lot of public record, and it's my fault if I haven't paid attention enough, close enough for the public record. But where is that money? Where is that agreement? Are we still in progress with this thing? Or have things changed?
Chris, I had you go over, I felt it was very important for council to hear this. And I really, normally we don't have back and forth in public comment, but I just want you to know, I believe probably to the last person, this is the first we had heard about the sewer backups and things. And I owe you a call. Why don't we talk tomorrow about where we're at with affordable units?
I would appreciate
Okay.
that, both as a professional and then
Yeah.
as a person.
Yeah.
Like I said, two very different hats.
Right.
I hope you
Right.
guys respect my
Oh,
due diligence.
okay,
and my-
well, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. Like I said, I am very confident no one had heard of this, but thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have two members that would like to discuss something's going, that mining days are going on at the Elks. And I would invite them both to come up. And by the way, you both have 3 minutes, or you can combine your time if you need 6. But welcome. Please come on up.
You would just state your names and addresses for the record.
What do you want it to be?
What it is.
Lauren, L-O-R-N. Klimek, K-L-I-M-E-K.
Colby Guthrie, C-O-L-B-Y, G-U-T-H-R-I-E.
You're both here with the Elks Club? Thank you.
Main reason we're here today is, we're trying to get the mining days going again. I've been to, I've helped out at Leadville, Creed, and, Uray. Also talked to a guy over in, Jesse Peterson over in, Central City.
The Heidi Mine.
All these guys are willing to help us. I don't know if you remember, all of our equipment got stolen a couple of years ago. These guys said they'll bring over whatever we want to get this going. I got a meeting Thursday with the Henderson mine, with the mine manager and a couple other guys up there. Dominic. Him and like Lalice or something like that.
Lalitha.
Yeah. But I want to set up for them Thursday, talk to them about it, and then I'm gonna try and talk to Martin Marietta down here, see if they'll, get us a rock and maybe a sponsorship and all that. And I was hoping the city could help us out here and there, maybe with like parking, give us a free parking for our contestants and stuff. That compete and all that. We're hoping to get like the lot on the corner there, right at 16th, across from the Elks. Free parking for our guys, and if you could have somebody police, great. If not, we could get some volunteers to do that too, I'm sure. We got a tentative date, July 19th and 20th of 2025. And what else we got here? We've already got our own board set up to help us out. Probably what I think I'm gonna do is go with the guy's name is James over in Leadville. It's close. If they can't bring their stuff over, I can go get it. Rather than driving to Creed or Uray or something like that. And Jesse Peterson over in Central City said he'd help us out with whatever we wanted. Other than that, for right now, that's all I got. I just thought I wanted to come in and let you know that we are gonna do it again. It's in the works. And hopefully the city can help us out a little bit here and there with, like I say, parking and what have you.
Lauren and Colby, again, normally we do not have back and forth in public comment. I do feel it would be in council's best interest to have your contact information. because, I'm especially thinking about our economic development folks, would probably love to see this come back.
In fact, Sadie, who is our business promotions, messaged me in the chat, wants to get your information.
Ah, there we
so
go.
She can.
So, if you gentlemen would, before you leave, please, provide us some contact info, and we look forward to.
Probably what I'll do, rather than use mine, I'll probably use the Elks.
Okay,
You know, they've got a wider venue, I guess, what I want to say.
I have that contact information.
oh, all right, okay. All right, just wanted to nail that down before you took off, and, thank you for coming in and, telling us what I feel is great news.
Cool. Like I say, probably sit down and have a meeting with somebody here, down the road. The only reason I'm doing this now because I retired from the mine. I wasn't a miner, I was a mechanic and a hoist operator. So, this is all new to me, but I do have a lot of help from a lot of miners here around town and stuff. I appreciate the time.
All right, well, thank you both very much.
Thanks, Colby.
Do we have any comments from folks online?
I don't see anyone online from the public.
Okay, then I would say that will conclude our public comment period. We have a rare opportunity and something that I know we all very much look forward to. We will be swearing in a new officer, Glenn Hardy. Welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Stall from that.
And Glenn's wife, it's Cindy, all right? Cindy is here as well.
Come on in there.
So I'm
Hi,
stalling, I'll just say a couple things about Glenn. So I met Glenn when I first was hired in April 2021 here as chief. And at the time Glenn was working at the sheriff's department as a captain. And we developed a relationship, a very solid professional relationship. He was really a cornerstone to helping me kind of survive my initial start here in Idaho Springs. And he was a great person that I could ask for advice about how things work here. And so, as most people really know, Glenn actually started and was in Park County, I know, and then he came to Idaho Springs and was Idaho Springs officer. Went to Empire, was the chief in Empire, and then went over to the sheriff's department, and now he's, what I like to say, you're back home. Okay, you're back home. So, he has a lot of experience, and so, he does get to start at the very bottom rung. So I get to know that at nighttime, when he's out working at night, that we have somebody with a lot of experience and it's going to make good decisions. So, yeah, so we're excited. So now I'll turn it over to Wonder.
I, Glenn Hardy, do solemnly declare and affirm that you will support the laws and Constitution of the United States of America and of the state of Colorado, the laws and ordinances of the city of Idaho Springs, and the rules and regulations of the Idaho Springs Police Department. I swear I will faithfully perform the duties of the office of Idaho Springs Police Officer to which I have been appointed.
I will.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, cool. All right.
Glenn, welcome. It's great to have you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. It's continuous training.
All right. Do we have our finance officer with us tonight?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Then we will move on to resolutions. And I'd like a motion for the first one, resolution number 22.
I'd like to make I'd like to approve resolution number 22, series 2024, a resolution supporting a yes vote on Clear Creek County Library District Proposition 6A.
Thank you, Kate. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second from Lisa. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Kate Collier,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
Janine Mariani,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes. All right, next up, ordinance number 20. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 20, series 2024
2024, an ordinance enacting a new section 7-5 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to authorize the city clerk to refer local FCPA complaints to the Colorado Secretary of State as authorized by state law, House Bill 24-1283.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Kate. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Kay Collier,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Janine Mariani,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes. Next up, we have two public hearings. And the first one we will be conducting is on the family relationships. And this is a public hearing. I should ask, is there anyone, there is no one tonight representing the applicant?
Well, we, as a city, I guess, are the applicant, so if you'd like, I can present on this topic. And if you think it's straightforward, I'm happy to cede my time.
Just asking because the wording is a little interesting on this, but this is a public hearing before City Council of the City of Idaho Springs on Ordinance 16, Series 2024, an ordinance amending Section 21-15 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to eliminate occupancy limits based on familial relationships as required by new state law, parentheses, House Bill 1007. The hearing is now declared open at 7:23 p.m. And we will open it with staff testimony.
Perfect, so, yeah, for the record, Joe Graves, city planner. I'll just very briefly touch on this because as you mentioned, it's required to comply with state statutes. Essentially, our current family definition states, any number of persons related by blood, adoption, or marriage, or an unrelated group of not more than 5 persons living together in a dwelling unit. That second half of the definition no longer complies with state statute. So essentially what we're doing is proposing to change this to comply with, to remove that no more than 5 persons definition requirement and replace it with what's seen in the packet. Group of persons living together as one housekeeping unit and dwelling unit, up to the maximum number that may safely occupy the dwelling based on demonstrated health safety standards, including but not limited to Chapter 12, 18, and 19 of this code, international building and fire code standards, water and wastewater quality standards, and applicable county and state health and environmental standards. So essentially, we still have a role in regulating occupancy, but it's based on these other standards rather than an arbitrary standard that we set forth. So, again, this is the minimum required to comply with the House bill. And so we, Planning Commission recommended approval and staff recommends approval.
All right. Thank you, Dylan. Does council have any questions for Dylan?
These other standards are due to size of dwelling, probably bedrooms, that type of thing.
Yeah, so for example, for building code, they state that a bedroom has to be a minimum of 70 square feet, and then for any additional occupants, an additional 50 square feet. So that would theoretically regulate them, even if you had in a 2-bedroom home, you couldn't have 50 people, something ridiculous living in it, because we do still have those other standards, but we can't arbitrarily say, you have 10-bedroom homes, still can only have 5 unrelated individuals.
But in a 2-bedroom, if each room was 11 by 12, you could have 2 people living in each bedroom.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, potentially, so then you could have 4.
120 square feet.
Yeah, 120 square feet.
I mean, it was construed that it would be more restrictive what we used to have versus what this could be in a larger bedroom house, like.
Right, yeah, probably when
3-bedroom
there's
house.
1-bedroom
Or a
house
5-bedroom
or a
house.
2-bedroom house, there's probably 5 unrelated persons. You might now be able to theoretically have
Unrelated
that.
parties.
But yeah, if you had, I don't know if we have a 10-bedroom home, but theoretically, if we could,
Yeah,
then you could have now. you know,
unrelated party,
more
whereas
unrelated
5
parties.
individuals related before.
Well, it makes a difference in three, because if you have three couples that are living in a 3-bedroom condo, it's
Yeah,
6 unrelated
It
people.
could be more
Yeah.
restricted that way.
Like the wildfire.
Right, and you know, and not to, my understanding of the intent was to open up, housing to folks and potentially make more affordable opportunities in places, college towns, for example. If you had a really restrictive, no more than 3 unrelated people, that makes it real hard for a roommate situation, for example.
How's this going over in Boulder?
Well, I think there's, I don't know for sure, but I know there's been talk in Fort Collins about impacts and things like that.
Yeah, sure.
All right, any further questions?
How is this regulated? I mean, it's kind of hard to regulate at times, I would imagine. Unless it's reported or.
What would you regulate though? I mean, really, what are you regulating? Just to make sure that they're not doing 15 people to us?
Yeah,
I mean, that's like neighborhood regulation. at that point.
Neighborhood watch.
Yeah, I think enforcement is always an issue with, something like this. I would guess that no more than 5 unrelated persons is also something that would have been quite difficult to enforce and likely has not been over the years. And I don't necessarily know whether that's happened in residential dwellings, but I wouldn't be surprised if it had.
Oh, any further questions for Dylan? Do we have any members of the public that wish to comment, perhaps online?
I don't have any attendees with a hand raised or anything, so.
All right, well, then if council has no further questions, I am going to declare this hearing closed at 7:28. And I will just say to start discussion, while I have seen this as a problem in Fort Collins, I have personally never seen this being an issue in Idaho Springs. Hopefully it stays that way. Do I have a motion on ordinance number 16?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 16, series 2024. An ordinance amending section 21-15 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to eliminate occupancy limits based on familial relationships as required by new state law HB 24-1007.
Thank you, Kate. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Janine. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Lisa Manfold.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Janine Mariani.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes. And then the second hearing tonight is about extended stay lodging. And once again, it would appear to me that we have no applicant. And Dylan, I appreciate you essentially standing in for both. This is a public hearing before the City Council of the City of Idaho Springs on ordinance number 18, series 2024, and ordinance adopting extended stay lodging licensing and operational requirements as a new section 21-35 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code. The hearing is now declared open at 7:30 p.m. And Dylan, welcome, and we look forward to your testimony.
Sure, of course. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity. So folks have probably know a little bit about this over the years because Planning Commission has been working on regulations related to this extended stay lodging facilities since dating back to 2021 even. And for a variety of reasons, it was tabled, it was picked back up, it was tabled. And now we're at a point where, since I've been on board, we've started working on that. There've been 4 or 5 meetings on this with the Planning Commission as a work session item. And ultimately, they were able to get to a point to recommend approval of this ordinance as prepared by our attorneys. Essentially, the background and impetus of this would be that we know that there's likely folks staying long-term in hotel and motel facilities that were designed as short-term transient stays rather than long-term stays. we also know that that's an important piece of housing in the city and is something that rather than just outlaw completely, we've sort of maybe allowed it to go on or didn't have proof one way or the other, or didn't enforce our current regulations, which would state that hotels and motels are for transient use, transient being defined as a period of less than 30 days. The hope with this ordinance would be two things, but the most important being providing minimum levels of health, safety, and welfare for folks living in these units, to also legalize these units, and finally to be able to monitor what we have in the city. And as we deal with other housing goals and housing projects and things like that, maybe there's an opportunity to, since we're monitoring these units, if approved, get those folks into more, I guess, permanent housing, if you will. So what this does, if approved as drafted, would do a couple of things. It would create a minimum standard for extended stay hotel and motel lodging facilities through the establishment of a licensing program requiring hotel operators offering these extended stays to submit minimum documentation. It also would require minimum standards, facilities and health and safety standards, inspections and the like. So first thing it does, of course, is define extended stay lodging, which means the renting of a room, unit, or other portion of a hotel or motel for a duration of stay greater than 29 consecutive days. And then it says duration of stay shall be calculated based upon the number of nights of occupancy by guest within the licensed premise as a whole, rather than within one particular room, unit, or defined area, to avoid people hopping between rooms, I guess, after 29 days. So the first thing it would do would be, if there's a lodging operator currently, or not currently, just lodging operator in general, wishes to rent for an extended stay, either their entire complex or simply one room or 5 rooms or a portion, it would complete an application similar to business license, essentially, that would have business name and address, floor plans of everything that's established as an extended stay room or unit or area, square footages, detailed floor plan with amenities, and the like. This would be renewed annually along with business license and a similar time frame. It would also, so that would be part one. Part of that license, as proposed in the ordinance, would be an inspection process just to make sure they're meeting those minimum health, safety, welfare standards. What we're anticipating would be like a life safety inspection, like the building department already does. Likely someone like myself, a code enforcement, might come along to make sure that it meets the occupancy and ordinance standards in addition to those life safety standards. That could be annually, or maybe if someone's in good standing for a number of years, hard to say if that would happen annually, but the ordinance will offer it. The other thing it would do would be to establish minimum standards. I think this was a sticking point that we went back and forth with the Planning Commission for quite a while. They ultimately determined that rooms would have to be displayed as extended stay lodging. Guests, there would be storage regulations so that possessions aren't stored all over the place. There'd be kind of private areas where you can do storage, whether that's in rooms, whether that's in a common storage area, that sort of thing. It would also require things like 24-hour staffing, which any normal hotel is required to have per code, wireless internet, laundry facilities of some kind, and secure storage, and then finally some sort of cooking facility, whether that's in units, whether that's one shared cooking facility. And so the thought with all of that, that would be the minimum standards. At some points, Planning Commission had talked about more restrictive standards, but it already feels like a lot of these places might already have something that could easily be a shared kitchen facility. The other things aren't necessarily, in Planning Commission staff's opinion, difficult to achieve, things like internet or 24-hour desk staffing, laundry facilities. Most hotels have that in some capacity. Where there might be more issue, but I don't know, is enforcement. As with everything, enforcement's a challenge. If it was approved, we would certainly do my first plan would be to send out to anyone who has a business license, who is a hotel motel operator, get them the information. Here's the ordinance that's been passed. Here's your minimum requirements. Here's the form that we've created that you fill out. Here's what you need to submit.
And your deadline?
The deadline for the ordinance as written was January 1st to submit, and it's March to have everything approved. And so that gives you some time to work through if you need to rewire a stove or something like that, or there's windows that are painted shut or something for egress or those sorts of things. After that period, then real enforcement would have to begin, but the problem with that would also be identifying and getting clear evidence that that is occurring. You know, we have that problem sometimes with short-term rentals and with other ordinances across the city. So I'm just stating that now is that a challenge that we'll have to face, but planning commission staff, you know, feels that hopefully, as with anything, most folks will try to comply. They can get into compliance. They want to do the right things. For the folks who don't, it'll be a challenge, but a challenge that feel as though we have the capacity to address. So over time, get everyone to a place where they can do it legally, safely, and, you know, not be too onerous on operators who are either doing this now or want to do it in the future, but also for the residents, which is really what this is aimed at addressing. With that, Planning Commission did recommend approval unanimously at the August 7th Planning Commission meeting. Like I said, there was 4 meetings this year. There was staff report stating that for several years working on this. So it's a long time coming to this point. I don't know if this is ultimately, you know, there'll be amendments, things like that, but I think Planning Commission staff feels that this is a good first step for that, you know, human safety, dignity sort of standpoint, just to get it to that level where folks who are in a situation where they're renting month to month from an extended stay room have these facilities. So with that, we recommend approval of ordinance number 18.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Dylan. We like to open it up, questions. Jimmy?
Yeah, Dylan, what's the cost increase for each one of those hotel owners to comply with this?
So the ordinance is not, I'm just making sure that this is true. The ordinance doesn't mention a fee for the licensing. I know business license right now is $75, correct? We have not, one thing I've noticed, we did not put together a specific form yet that would regulate it.
I'm working on the form, just to include all the regulations that the ordinance is talking about.
So long story short, the ordinance wouldn't require a fee, but for folks that already have, say, a common kitchen facility or kitchen facilities in rooms, there might be very little cost to retrofit, if you will. But for someone who didn't have a common kitchen facility, that would certainly be an expense.
What would keep them from then just telling their tenants every 28 days you gotta move?
That is another challenge, and that's a fair challenge, is that anytime you establish something that restricts a use that's been ongoing, there could be an unintended consequence of someone losing housing. And where this would, it would essentially, like, you know, where the definition is concerned, someone couldn't like move from that place to another place in the same unit, but they could certainly, I suppose folks who are in here now, if you can't comply after March, if there's someone with us. The one thing I will note is we wouldn't, and Carmen might be able to speak better to whether we could evict someone. I don't
just
quite know about that.
curiosity.
So I have a few questions, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So this is I should have been ahead of this and I apologize, but we operate a 30-day lease program out of an old motel. We're no longer a motel. So I need clarification. Does this apply to my piece of property? I'm not operating as a motel.
That I don't know. I don't know enough about that particular property to know whether it would qualify as a hotel or motel, or if it's a like residential
apartment,
apartment complex.
But I would speak to this, we have 30-day leases, we don't have kitchens. They have a mini fridge and a microwave. I understand the process of trying to have health and safety involved here. But I don't know if this has been considered by the planning commission. Do they know how many people they might displace out of living quarters by doing that?
Yeah.
I mean, that probably wasn't a survey or anything that came into their
I was gonna,
thought process.
I was gonna ask a question that is related to what you're asking, Scott. So in my understanding, the 30-day rentals without kitchens have never been a acceptable use. It's nowhere in our code that these are acceptable uses.
Well, if there's no kitchens in a unit, then it wouldn't likely meet the definition of dwelling unit, so it couldn't be classified as a apartment complex.
So I mean, that was what I was gonna get to. So essentially what the planning commission, because I was on planning when we started this many years ago, and I'm glad to see it, and I know it will impact you, Scott, and and other people. It was to clean up and make the places for those 30-day, 60-day, 90-day persons better, not to kick them out, but just to make their living quality better, to have a little mini kitchen or something that was more, long-term livable versus motel rooms. So that was the intention, not to like have people losing their
And
house.
I understand that, but if you try to tell us to do that by March, all 18 of my tenants will be on the street. Because that's a costly.
The financial burden.
And I agree with that.
A financial burden, and we're supplying low-income housing to people that can't pay
And I know that.
$1,500 a month.
And I was actually gonna bring that
And
up.
that's the challenge that this whole county has.
I was gonna bring that up because that's one thing that I did think it was a tight turnaround for me personally. I would have looked at something more in the lines of a year. Depending on how many dwellings you had, if you have, maybe per unit, you have this many days or 30 days to do it. So you could do it one a month. Scott, you would be better to talk to about that, but something more.
I would like to be on the discussion with the planning commission and tell them the other side of this. Because we have tenants that are on the verge of being homeless.
Right.
Otherwise, they'll be homeless.
Well, I don't think we have to go there. I think that's what I'm saying, is we could stay back. I think that the council or the planning commission can work with the owners of the buildings to make sure that we're not evicting people. The intention is to keep people housing safely. That's all.
Well, health and safety is smoke detectors and exits, and kitchens are another thing.
Dylan,
And I probably can't vote on this if my property is classified as this.
But you can speak to it for sure.
one thing I would think that would be looked at by various owners is dropping a unit to make it a
common
kitchen instead of trying to, because this is what comes to my mind. It may be difficult or financially not even feasible to try to convert some of these where they have, a stove and refrigerators and a sink for a kitchen sink. But they may be able to drop one unit and have a communal kitchen.
Right, or in the case of, say, hotel that has a communal.
Common area.
Like a continental breakfast sort of area.
Yep.
That would potentially already meet that standard. I think, planning commission certainly recognized that if they required like a full kitchen or even a kitchenette in each unit, like there's no way it could possibly happen. That is far too expensive and onerous for any owner of a extended stay lodging facility. I also do think they did talk, as far as timeline goes, this, I certainly think a longer rollout would be reasonable. And I don't think planning commission would be opposed to that, certainly. And I also obviously wouldn't be opposed to something like
Paul,
that.
for the purposes of this hearing, we'll consider your comments as staff testimony.
I have, is kitchen defined? What's the definition of kitchen? Because the generic definition of kitchen is a space or room or a portion of a room dedicated to food preparation.
Yeah, it says it in here,
Specifically
sink,
defined.
sink,
Sink.
full-size
Fine in the-
fridge,
Yeah, it's in our
all
code.
that.
A cooktop, microwave,
I-
stove unit,
yeah,
or
a cooktop.
equivalent cooking appliance, full-size refrigerator, full-size kitchen sink, and communal seating space.
Okay.
Dylan?
I-
Oh, go ahead.
oh, no.
No, you go ahead, Jimmy.
I'm not, this isn't my industry and I don't have any business in rentals or any of the above, but I am a business owner and I understand business expenses, especially when, the government starts coming down on you. And as a business owner, which, I really agree with Scott, like, everybody knows it, and anybody who has rentals, I don't, but I do understand, like, cost that's forced upon you that you have to pass on. And when you can't pass it on, i.e. Scott, to, he can't absorb it and it's not fair to him to absorb it.
Well, speaking to that is the point that I was gonna make is if I have the cost of doing this, I will raise my rent.
That's it, it's gotta be
And
passed
then
on, and then
there's 10% of these people who will be homeless.
that's just it,
And I will be renting to a different class of citizen.
that's what I'm saying,
I
is
mean,
that,
we run our operation, I understand some of these operations are very questionable in Idaho Springs, the way they are ran. We run ours respectably, we don't put up with certain things there. So I understand the health and safety, but when you do this, there's other results because of it.
So there's compromise in this conversation, and again, many years talking about this on planning. The compromise is, you just mentioned it, that there's bad players and there's bad actors. We all know this to be very true. I think, again, having this discussion maybe in a work session where we talk about how do we extend it out so that people that are good players.
And make sense of it.
And make sense of it, and so that there's a compromise for people that are good players. And it gives you much more time to talk about it, absorb it in your mind, maybe talk about it with the people that live in your building, say, hey, this is what we're gonna do. It's gonna be good for you, but it's gonna take us some time. It might take a little bit of money and that's a private thing that you would do, Scott, within your business, but going back to planning and saying, let's modify this so that the good players don't get penalized and the people that are their tenants don't get penalized. And that we make these other places safer and better.
And I mean, if people knew this was happening, there would be maybe a
An
crowded
audience.
audience.
Yes.
And we don't have that audience.
And I will tell you that
This has been on, I was on planning 2 years ago, this was a discussion
It
that
has,
kept happening on planning, like, this is not something that is just out of the blue, like, they didn't say, you know what? Let's get after all these motel homes.
I guess it's the responsibility of each business owner to know what's going on in this city, and that's hard to do sometimes.
I will
If
tell you,
those business owners are alerted somehow,
yeah, this one was
Then-
dropped and then picked up again and dropped and
Yes.
picked up again, and that is part of the confusion, I think.
There's also, isn't there also, like, would this be, if this passes just as it is, although I do think we should
I
ask
think we
for-
should table it.
I don't know, I think we should push it, like, I think there should be a longer
Process,
period, but I
yeah.
don't wanna table this forever, because there are some really bad actors, people are not living in.
Absolutely.
They are
Healthy.
not living in
and I
healthy
don't
things,
have a problem.
is there a way that this would go to variance for someone like, Scott, you said you have a mini fridge and a cooktop, so that's half
Not a
the
microwave.
cooktop, just a microwave.
microwave? Are they allowed hot plates or anything?
No,
Well,
because we don't have the electric for that.
Fair enough.
This,
I mean, here's a couple things I've considered. I mean, upgrading our electrical would probably be 40,000 maybe. Building onto the building is an option. I've considered that. That's a $2 million remodel to put kitchenettes, adding on to the building space. I'd probably be more than 2 million
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
because I've considered it, but then
Right.
the payback, it
It's not,
doesn't economically
not-
feasible. So I continue to rent to the players that can only afford that amount of rent.
Mhm.
You're gonna displace them.
I think I'm not saying that at all. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying we need to work out a compromise where we bring the people that are not doing the right thing up and we don't penalize the people that are doing the right thing. That's all I'm saying.
You know,
And I ask nothing more than to be part of that discussion with this planning commission, because I
May
think I
I,
can bring to the table
Now that
another point of insight,
Yeah.
because they're not seeing my side.
may I,
They're trying to make it, I understand, clean up, but the
May
other
I-
side of
I
that is
make-
displacing people.
a suggestion that, we table this hearing, to a future date. It is apparent to me from this discussion that there is at the very least, some further, investigation.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a great deal of time because Lisa's point is well taken. We have been talking about this for years, and there are some bad actors that need to be dealt with in a reasonable, time. However, perhaps we will look at, what the time schedule is currently, March and, would everybody feel that was productive if we tabled this?
Janine, did you have? Well, yeah, it's kind of like a follow-up to I understand your situation, so like how many people I guess we don't know, because you were like, oh, did you survey the business owners, like how many people do already have that communal kitchen because they were a motel that had continental breakfast or not? Like I do think it is helpful to know how many units it impacts, if there's any way to have that information.
Well, we have an opportunity to maybe have a communal kitchen. We would displace one of our tenants because of that. Because we have like a manager's apartment. That's basically what the Bears, what's the name of the people that do the
Lift
J?
now, it's the lift and uplift. The lift
They
is
do
the barely
J-
in,
The lift does J1.
J1, no, the lift does usually above lift, and then up, I don't know what uplift does.
But they're not J1.
Some of them are J1, yeah.
So they're doing a mix, right? And then the other one that they bought, they have a communal kitchen where they do J1s, and I've heard rumors, they put 2 and 3 people in a small room and they get $800 per person, which is not our business model, but that's what they're doing.
Well,
So you consider that as another thing that's happening. These motels are renting their rooms for $450 a week and taking advantage of people in low income. I know that's happening. There's a lot to this.
Well, for the purposes of this hearing, I am not going to officially close out the hearing. I'm just going to say that we will continue this at a further date upon having a certain amount of time to revisit some of these aspects. Lisa?
Is it possible to bring planning commission in for a work session? Because I think rather than bounce the ball back between us and planning commission, could we all get together and talk about this?
Is that allowable?
Well, I have never heard of it being done. It's always.
I don't know if we're allowed to or not.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
I think.
I mean,
Oh, wait, wait, hold on, Carmen.
Yes, Carmen, please.
Sorry, good discussion, valuable discussion. I was just actually wondering procedurally, and I was going to ask you if you didn't direct us as staff to let us know how you wanted this procedurally to go next, whether or not you wanted this to come back to you next, or you wanted to go to Planning Commission next. And Councilor Manifold raises an interesting question. Could you, both bodies, meet together and have a work session on this ordinance? And the answer is absolutely yes. You could have a joint. You could have a joint work session. We would notice that under the Sunshine Law so that everybody in the world knows. And that's perfectly acceptable if you wanted to have a group discussion. And Mayor, if you could, when discussion is done and wrapped up, and again, all this is very valuable, if you could close the hearing just for this evening and note the time. That does not mean that the hearing cannot be continued and we'll reopen it. We of course must when the ordinance comes back to you. So those are all options for you to continue the hearing, have it again another night. It's also an option for you to meet with the Planning Commission if you want.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, so as far as a direction for staff, I would highly encourage us to set up a date in the near future where we can have a work session jointly with Planning Commission. I would also like to see the players that this is going to affect, meaning property owners. I would like some notice, some input on this.
Invite all the players.
I would like to invite the.
I think would be a good idea.
Definitely.
And once that's accomplished and we have shaken this out well, we will continue this hearing at a later date.
Now, when you say all players, do you mean anyone who operates a lodging business, or how do you want?
If you specifically say to all the businesses that operate as a lodging unit, that this is what we are going to be looking at, this is what we're looking at discussing this night. If they're not worried about the 30-day, then they're not gonna come, right? They won't come, they don't care. But if they are looking at that's what they're doing, they're gonna wanna know what's going on, even if they don't say anything to us.
I agree with Kate. I'm just trying, and I think all of us want to give a fair shake to the property owners, and also make sure that we're allotting a reasonable amount of time to make these modifications. In some cases, it could take you many months just to line up contractors. So it's something to consider.
Yeah.
But I think in all fairness, we should invite the players, meaning the lodging owners, and have a joint work session. It may be a first for our city, but I think it'd be very productive.
Chuck, I was gonna ask though, is there anybody that is on the potential housing authority that we wanna have involved in this conversation? Is there money out there to help these guys improve their properties to make these 30-day or more dwellings? I mean, or is there money out there? I don't know the answer to this.
I will say, I'm not aware of any government
Right,
money.
that's gonna
I
help.
mean, obviously there's private, but I'm just not, doesn't mean it doesn't exist,
Right,
but
I know,
I have not heard of it.
okay, I just thought I'd throw it out there.
May I suggest also that when we do this work session, we do it on a night that we do not have council?
Yeah.
No,
Because
yeah.
this one is gonna get,
Oh, it
Right.
could be.
Right.
this is gonna get feisty, I think.
I think we should be on a planning commission night, like a Wednesday night.
And Lisa was asking me a question that I'd like to clarify is, we're basically more operating as an apartment building out of conformity. Dylan would say. probably.
Non-conforming.
Non-conforming. That's what I would view how we're operating.
Cause you actually don't do transient lodging, so.
But an apartment
Well,
building
well,
would
We do
require
30-day leasing,
certain
so these
things.
other places, a lot of them have done 1 week at a time, and they charge those people enormous amounts of money, and that pisses me off to no end that they're getting that kind of money out of our lower income
Well,
citizens.
just for the purposes of this hearing, we will not be taking a vote because this will be tabled for a later date. I am going to note the time is 7:59. And we will move on to the next item on our agenda. And I do appreciate everybody. That was some very, very valuable input that we're going to expand on in the future. So next up, we have a city attorney, Carmen. Before you take off, anything further to share with us tonight?
No, sir. I would just echo what you said. Appreciate the input on that, and we'll get to work on scheduling something. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Have a good night, Carmen.
Thanks, Carmen.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
All right, next up, we have 3 items or action requests under city administrator. And the first one is about the mountain bike park. And do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve a change order in the amount of $452,210 and an extension of time under the current contract agreement with Full Ride Concept to construct phase 3 trails to Virginia Canyon Mountain Bike Park out of account number 21-00-6024.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Janine. And any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Kate Collier,
Yes,
Lisa Manifold,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
Janine Mariani,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes. And the second one is the approval of a application for a planning grant. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve an application to the U.S. Department of Transportation for a reconnecting communities planning grant in the amount of $575,200 for design and engineering of a pedestrian bridge over Interstate 70 at exit 240 and of multimodal improvements to a half-mile of Colorado Highway 103 south of I-70.
Thank you, Lisa. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Scott. And, any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Janine Mariani.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes. And, the last one under city administrator is, an application, to Colorado Parks and Wildlife. It's a grant application. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve an application to Colorado Parks and Wildlife for a non-motorized trails grant in the amount of $250,000 for Phase 4 trails construction at Virginia Canyon Mountain Park.
Thank you, Janine. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Kate. And any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Janine Mariani.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yeah. Next up, planner Dylan, did you have anything further to share with us tonight?
Nothing from me, no. I will, we have a planning commission meeting coming up on October 2nd to discuss a few items, so would it be helpful to get their availability for a work session?
Very much.
sometime
I'm glad you thought of that. This would be a perfect time to do it.
You said so, and would folks think that it might be wise to do like a Monday that doesn't have a council meeting, or do like just any old day?
Or Wednesday.
We can do a Wednesday too.
Well.
Yeah.
You know, on their night, they
So,
have nothing coming
If
up.
we are gonna notify some of these players, then you have to have adequate time to do that as well.
Yes.
Can you put together a letter for our hotel motel business owners to let them know what is being discussed?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. And if anybody knows of any operator who like self
Yeah, I
Scott, who
don't know if
probably
there's another one out there.
I do.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, that would be helpful, because in that scenario like that, where you're kind of in this strange situation, it's or doesn't neatly fit in a box.
And
It
you're not breaking any ordinances.
might have been missed, you know, so.
I was gonna say.
At this point, no, you're
Nobody
all
was
in
saying that. I
compliance.
was like, there's a yet floating around in the yard.
All right.
Oh, wait,
Oh,
Just,
go
I
ahead.
wanted to comment on something that Dylan's report. I'm really excited, and I'm putting on my HPRC hat. We have been working all year on updating the guidelines. And I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but there were definitely some holes in the guidelines that we have found through our applicants over the last year and a half. And I think with the interest in our city, I think these are really good. So I'm excited to bring these guidelines to you guys.
All right. Anything further?
Thanks.
Okay. Did you have anything to share with us tonight?
No, not really. October 1st is when I start mailing out business license renewals and short-term rental renewals.
Oh,
So
okay.
that mailing going out next week, so I'm working on that. Nothing much.
Not to me. All right. Well, thank you. Chief, have your report. Anything further to share with us tonight?
Just the one thing, and I explained to Lisa that we did get that device that measures vehicle numbers, like the number of vehicles and how fast they're going. So we do have that up, and we're trying to use that. It does not take pictures, it doesn't do anything like that. It just basically counts the cars and tells us if is there a certain time of day when people are actually speeding in that specific area. So I think it's gonna be nice for us to gather that data, so.
All right.
Thank
we do
you.
have
Good news.
Can I ask Chief?
Yeah, of course.
Chief, thanks for, it looks like one of the patrol cars did come out to Wall. We still have the same issue. Is it because of the construction that all these are actually locals that are driving like banshees up on that road? That's not random people. But Wall Street's been getting a lot more traffic than it has in the past, and they're driving super fast. So I had texted, because the citywide Wall Street asked me to say something. So I texted chief and he had a patrol car come out, but they're still doing it. And I don't know if it's because they're not coming up Virginia to go to the
I
houses.
think that's it, yeah,
You think so?
yeah. Virginia's been such a nightmare,
I know, I'm sorry, you guys are really.
so I
down
do
there.
think that's exactly what's happening.
The closures and where they're working at changes from day to day and sometimes hour to hour.
Oh, I
So,
know, I go home and.
you know, somebody coming up on Virginia may see something closed and, you know, their frustration, they're gonna have to go up around Wall Street to come around the other side.
Maybe it's just a matter of when we're doing these kind of constructions that we get some signs that say, you know, this area is being patrolled or something, just to kind of say, you know, we get it, it's frustrating, but there are people who live here, like, and little kids live here. I just feel like it's very willy-nilly where people decide that they can express their frustrations is right in front of people's homes. And so, yeah, I don't know what the answer is, I'm just putting things out there.
Not feel good information, but I believe very accurate. Paul, I don't know if you've heard any differently, but I think there's only about 1 or 2 more days left.
For gas.
Oh, okay, all right.
This is not.
Because I've seen them patching the areas they tore up for gas, and they're almost to 23rd.
For gas, FNF, formerly, ACC, will start here, and so it'll be even more torn up. Well, they're gonna start on Virginia Canyon, so at least Virginia Street we'll get a little bit of a reprieve for a short period. But it's only gonna be a short period.
Gotcha.
Sorry, Chuck.
No, it's all right.
Chief, you
Yeah.
were alluding to something in an earlier council meeting about patrolling the I-70 corridor where this construction speed limit is 45. Nobody follows it. And then there could be thousands of tickets, but are you asked by state patrol to help support them on this? Is that at times?
We were asked pretty early on in the project by CDOT, because of CDOT employees. I mean, we all know there was a tragedy in a different part of the state with 2 CDOT employees being killed, so, so we were asked, and our people do spend a little bit of time out there, but we have requests and other needs within the city infrastructure instead of just the interstate. So it's just, we do the best we can to try to.
I wish people would just slow down. It's hard to,
absurd.
I mean, everybody's going 60, 65.
No, between 239 and 240?
Through this
That is
40,
great.
anywhere there's construction east of there, they are not, I mean, there's very few people going 45. If they're going 45, you're going, why are you going so slow?
Yeah.
And it's not that I want, the object is to write a bunch of tickets, right? Just for the safety of everybody.
But there have been a lot of tickets written.
There.
It doesn't
have
bother
been.
Fines are like 200.
And I think a lot of
something
people,
percent.
I've heard a lot of people have gotten passes, you know.
Well, the
At
fines,
least the warning at least should include them in for the next time.
if you look at the report, the fines are up 247%. So.
Crazy.
And it's not,
Unfortunately
it's
for
not,
them, but I
and
guess that helps us.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not trying, I mean, we're not trying to, we're just trying to make it safe for people.
I
That's
know,
all we're
I
trying to
agree,
do.
chief, you guys are doing a great job.
Are those state tickets written, chief, or are they city?
They're city tickets.
Cool.
That's why
Right
the
on.
fines are up 247%.
Let's put that in a rainy day fund though, let's not count on that one,
It's
hopefully
general
one
fund.
day.
To be honest, I have to remind myself because traffic is flowing at that speed. I'm like, not thinking, trying, you know, like look down, and go, oh, I'm
Hauling
a
ass.
little going a little too fast myself. It's 45 through there. Remind yourself, 45.
I noticed he didn't say that on camera.
I always say stuff
What
like
the
that on
speed
camera.
was. Anyways,
Oh, he said it on purpose on camera, okay.
But,
right,
so
that's
chief,
all I have,
nothing
Mayor.
further, all right, well, thank you. And then, next up, we have, Public Works, and we do have a request, for action. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve additional funding for the Public Works Facility paving project by AFAS Patch in the amount of $19,374 from line item 23-00-6016.
Thank you, Kate. Do I have a second? Second from Jeremy. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Kate Collier,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Janine Mariani,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes. And Paul, did you have anything further to share with us tonight?
I did want to bring up the sewer issue that had been brought up by Chris earlier. We did get that call last week. We went out the same day, later that day after the call. We jetted the main, and I'm suspecting they have a common service in there that's fouling up. And we've jetted as much as we can of that common service, but it seems like there's a dead end to it. I need to get a camera in there to actually see what's going on and how that might be arranged. But we also informed those homeowners that they would have to contact plumbers after we jetted and cleared the main. We did not find any obstructions in the main itself. Flows were good. We dye tested tested the flow with dyes just to get a time between from point A to point B. Our jetting didn't dislodge anything that created an excessive flow in there. So we weren't finding issues on the main itself. So there's a common service or service lines that are having issues in there. I can't say that the construction had any cause to this. This is just old 100-year-old stuff that's in the ground that coincidentally happened to back up at the same time that construction's being done right next door.
Paul, could it be the seismic activity that Chris was talking about? Could that have dislodged any of those old lines?
It could have made an offset worse, but I can't see it really shifting a line by several inches.
And I don't know what's going on down there, so I don't know how.
And do you know how many people were affected?
Isn't it that
Four
little
homes,
triangle?
I thought, yeah.
It's that triangle, that weird little kind of.
It's like
own
the
neighborhood.
Minor Street and Idaho Street, that weird, and there's 4 or 5 homes.
Yeah, they're very close together. If you go to the end of the rec center, it starts the triangle.
Yeah.
And it's right there, and that's where the homes are.
From Bruce Leesy's place to the west. Yeah.
Well, Chris is on Minor, so it would go like that little Idaho and then that piece of Minor.
It's just, yeah.
Well, that flow is coming this direction, so that would be east of the project, right?
Well, they're
Yes.
right at the east side of the project.
Yeah, so. That's
So,
strange.
so let me ask about a camera, maybe.
And that would be to scope that, what I think is a common service line between the two. We ran across an obstruction that we either could not get around, get over, get through. And it could potentially just be an end of a line where other lines are tying into it or another line ties into it. I could be on a Y. I don't know what's there until we get a camera in to see what's going on.
And Paul, just because I think council may be getting calls about this, when do you think we might be able to have a camera?
I can get a camera in there tomorrow.
Okay,
I tried to get one in there today, but we were working on a fire hydrant today, so.
okay. All right, well, thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, anything further?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
Hey, Ed, next up, just thank you for your report and just wanted to check in, see if you had anything further to share.
Thank you, guys. Everything's working really well.
All right.
No problems here.
Wow, cool. Excellent.
All the projects are going smoothly and working well.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you. Hey, I've got something under mayor and council that Phyllis Adams brought up about the historic sites and facilities. We do need to take some action with your permission on the terms for folks, right? So some need to be 2 years, some need to be 4. They did talk amongst themselves, and we have some direction here. 2 doesn't matter. Both Phyllis and Lou Howard would like 4 years. Reva would like 2. So that leaves Michael and Margaret. And my suggestion is, just so the math works out, we have Michael and Margaret also as 2. So what we would have is we will have 2 4-year terms for those who have requested it. And we will have 3 2-year terms for those who have either requested it or were indifferent to the term limits. Lisa.
I struggle with giving a 4-year term limit to someone that was on the sites and facilities before and did not uphold their term limits or their term guidelines.
Lisa, I do appreciate that. However, of the 5, there were only 2 that expressed interest in a 4-year term.
And how many 4-year term limit seats do we have?
There are 2. And the other 3, we had 1 request for a 2-year limit and the other 2 were indifferent.
I do believe that you could have 3 4-year terms per the ordinance.
I agree with you. No, 100%.
So you could, I guess.
The math works out either way. Either you have 2 4 years, right? Or you have the 2 years. But just because we did have 2 that requested 4 and only 1 that requested 2, the other 2 were indifferent.
So Margaret, I think Margaret Smith, with her background, I think she'd be good as a 4-year member.
Give her a 4-year and give it to you.
All right,
Yeah.
all right. If council would
I'm okay
be,
with that, yeah.
would be amenable to Margaret going forward, and then we will have, we'll have 3 4s and 2 2s.
Is that okay?
What's the reasoning for having 4-year terms?
You have to stagger them so
Yeah,
that you don't lose the whole thing at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah,
you
so
know?
half the board turns over.
It's when you start a new board, that's always.
Right. Is council
I'm
all
good,
right
I'm
with
good
that?
with that, yeah, thanks.
All
Thanks for letting me.
Does anybody have anything further before I adjourn us tonight?
I do actually have 2 things.
Yes.
First, I think what Chris brought up was really good because I have gotten complaints from the building that is going on down there from my constituents that they are not entirely careful with some of their marking and their sites, and I know I've directed them to Dylan. I do think we're gonna have to be on top of that as they build, because my phone has been blown up by a couple of constituents. I know Dylan's has as well, because I have directed them in his direction. Because that's not my, like, I can't do anything about that. Like, I have to send this to the
Your
city.
wheelhouse.
It is not my lane, and I stay in my lane. The second is, the Idaho Springs Literary Festival is October 4th, 5th, and 6th. If you are going to be here, it is 1000% free. Joanne Greenberg is our keynote on Friday. Sandra Dallas is our keynote on Saturday. And the young authors of Idaho Springs that Libby mentioned, they are gonna be our keynotes on Sunday.
Oh, excellent. All
The
right,
schedule should be up tomorrow.
very good.
Cool.
Paul?
Send it to
I
me,
can
I'll
address
post it
your
when I get
concern
the
about some of the stakes and marks. The stakes are really offset to the sides. They don't indicate anything there at the stake specific points. It's usually an offset, something that's occurring inside the right of way or roadway. So the stake's just off to the edge to give indication to a crew that this is the depth they should be digging in the alignment for the utility.
They need to talk though to the residents, because that has not been communicated with the residents, and I know the particular resident that I'm thinking about, they have gotten a lot of runaround from trying to deal with this on their own as an adjacent property owner to that property. And I don't think that the property owner should have to go through this much hassle to, have things be clear.
So I bring up one point, do we have any formal type of communication on a project this size to the city on a weekly or basis, or is there anything, challenges like this are gonna pop up every once in a while?
Right, so from the development team, right?
From the development team to the city, to maybe you, the planner, I don't know if it'd be the proper avenue, but things like this isn't gonna be the first time on this project.
Like a
I'm
site
hearing-
manager or something?
And I'm thinking forward to the Carlson Elementary project that I'll be a neighbor to. There's gonna be challenges there
Yeah.
that I'm sure there's gonna be, but is there something we could ask of a developer to have a team at least address issues like this?
I would think somebody
and the
on
communication
point.
level.
We've had that in the past at our council, like they've come and presented like what's going on so that we have an opportunity to ask them questions. And then like when we get the sewer
Cause
issue,
I would ask,
we already know
Paul,
about
does this developer or this construction personnel even know that this problem exists? And they might even
Yeah,
say,
they may not.
They
maybe,
might not.
maybe this is what it is, I don't know.
I don't think they'd own up to anything. They would just say, as a developer, that's not us. That's the first thing that's gonna come out of their mouth.
Possibly, yes.
I certainly have on a few, not on the sewer line, but on other issues associated with the site today, and I have talked quite a lot with several of the property owners, and then in response had meetings with the property owners, myself and the development team. But we don't have like an established policy or procedure to say like, if we have to meet for just a regular update every 2 weeks, we could propose that.
I think we absolutely should do, I think it's a great idea, absolutely. I mean, it gives them gives us accountability over them, and I think that, my understanding though is planning used to do that, so it's weird that planning would not be the one to do it.
I mean, it is possible, this has nothing to do with that development, but it's coincidence
It
that
is an
something's
interesting
happening.
coincidence. and-
Yeah, all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Well, and there is all that, utility work going on in Idaho Street between 11th and 13th, which
Yeah.
is probably unrelated because they're not connected, but
We have no idea what's.
I can see why a member of the public would be like.
Yeah.
they
And
must-
I've been on the end of like the construction team that gets blamed for anything that's happening in the area when work starts being done. So-
Yeah.
They don't even have to be in the area. We've had people complain about work we did on the other side of town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've been privy to that.
Yeah.
I think if we had a clear pipeline of information that.
Like a point person for
Well, so
a
that residents
project.
also know, you can come talk to us and we will bring these complaints to this person, we have a person.
Yeah.
And they did establish, well, the development team did establish a website that they distributed, or they said they distributed to like neighbors. To say, if you have a complaint, here's the email address, here's the phone number, here's the information on what's coming. I haven't checked in a little while, but they did create that in an attempt to try to do that, but clearly, at least in this particular instance, it has not occurred.
Or they
So,
didn't know it was there.
Yeah,
Didn't know it's there.
Oh, yeah.
Chris was certainly, he said that he did have contacts with the developer, so he didn't go in length as to how responsive they were.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you said that kind of fell on deaf ears as well.
I think that proposal is fantasitic though, because especially next year when minor street improvements are anticipated to occur, per their timeline, that will have a big impact on a public right of way, even more so than the utility work between 11th and 13th. So having a routine check-ins, even just at the staff level, will be helpful, since it will.
Good
Is this
idea.
something we need to do an ordinance for, like, does this need to be, or does it need to be just an understood part of the
No, we
procedure?
can.
Well, whoever's
absolutely
doing
make
that
this
for the
plan
city
developer.
should have some thick skin.
Yeah. Well, and maybe Paul will cover something tomorrow with Cameron, and we'll find out, if this is coincidental or, something's going on. Anyways, anything further before I adjourn?
Wonder does.
Oh, yes, Wonder.
So just for next meeting, there's gonna be that special work session on October 7th. I'm pretty sure it's all about budget.
Yes.
And then the
Thank
next
you.
regular meeting on
Thank
October
you,
1st.
Wonder.
Meeting next Monday.
No meeting next Monday. See everybody on the 7th. And I want to thank everybody.
No, I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
What I-